You are listening to A Scary State, and this week we're covering the District of Columbia. So, Kenzie?
Yes, Lauren?
Let's get scary.
Whoop, whoop.
Bringing it back home to D.C.
Well, for us.
Home
anyway.
adjacent.
We're the next door neighbor.
Next door neighbor to us.
That's like really close.
Like the annoyingly close neighbor.
Yeah. I address our neighbor in my story.
Do you really?
I do. And I address being so close to said neighbor.
Oh!
What?
Their balconies are very close to ours, and I can see so much of their balcony from our windows. Very close neighbors.
Oh, literally close neighbors.
Yeah.
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 From certain apartments and certain, if you're like high enough, I can see the Washington Monument from
Oh.
where I live.
Aw.
Yeah.
That's pretty.
I can see it a lot easier when it's like winter and there's no leaves on the trees.
Yeah, when everything's just bare.
Exactly.
So I went tubing this weekend, and I think I showed you the
that's-
picture. So I went tubing, and I had just got my tattoo, right? And at that point, it had only been a week. So I was like, okay, it can't be in the sun. It can't get wet. What am I going to do?
I'm going to write myself a note and I'm posting that picture on Instagram.
So I cut up Band-Aids. I put them on the tattoo so there would be no stickiness on them. I cover it with like athletic tape. Really got it good. We were tubing. Somehow we tubed for 4 hours. Time warped on the water.
How long did you think you were going to tube for?
Joe and I thought we would be home by 5. We got off the river at 4:30. We started at 12.
It seems like an average tube.
I don't know. Usually we thought like 1, maybe 3 hours. No, like 4.5.
But you've been tubing before.
Yeah, but not to this one, and it's never been that long.
Oh.
I don't know.
Okay.
But so anyway, I get in the car and I like get home. I take it off. I'm like, whoa. My arm was very tan.
Oh my God.
And the part of my tattoo is like pale.
It's hilarious because it's a perfect square.
It is, which made me very proud about my like taping abilities. And then Joe burned his face, but he was wearing a hat. So part of he has this like line across his forehead that's just white. Let me show you a picture.
It's a good thing he just always wears a hat.
I know, but we're going to an event on Saturday where he can't wear a hat.
Uh-oh.
This was after I'd been laughing for like 5 minutes straight, so he wasn't
really annoyed.
He
with
wasn't
you.
entertained.
You should get the like what is it, Jergens, like the moisturizer lotion that's like tinted.
I told Joe, I was like, if we need to, I will put makeup on you to blend that in. So we'll see what happens.
The lotion might be better because then your mom can't give him too much shit for it. Oh, I can picture it now.
Oh yeah. So Mackenzie, you want to talk about DC?
Okay, we already talked about how you have a hard time admitting that you're wrong.
Because I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Okay, people. Everyone knows I'm afraid of elevators.
We've talked about it on this podcast numerous times. You could actually go back into the audio and I'm sure you could find
Mackenzie
the exact
will
conversation that I'm...
do a poll on our Instagram. Am I afraid of elevators because I can't get out of them and I am stuck in them, or because it's a small space?
You don't want to get stuck in a small space.
No, I don't care about the small space. I'm fine in small spaces.
Well, that's good to know now. Now I have the correct information. Before, you never corrected me, so this is still your fault.
I just don't like being stuck in places.
Yeah, but specifically, you said small places.
I mean, I don't like being stuck in small places either, but I don't like being stuck in places in general.
Yeah, no one does. But when we're referring to an elevator,
I think people just assume it's a small space. Because
you've never corrected them. So that's, again, your fault.
Because the main point of the story is that I'm afraid of them, of being stuck in them. So I don't need to correct the people for the small parts. What?
People always ask why.
Why I'm afraid of them?
Yeah.
And I say, because I've got stuck in one.
Right.
Yeah.
That's what I say too.
Yeah, there's no mention of small spaces.
But the difference in why I was freaking out when we were stuck and why you were freaking out when we were stuck is very different.
Well, yeah, because you were just afraid we were going to fall. I was afraid because I was in a box that I couldn't get out of.
Small space.
No. 18 years of friendship and you're wrong. Tell me about DC.
Someone told me over the weekend that they really, like our genuine conversations.
Is this what they meant?
I don't know. I don't know if they listened to those episodes.
Maybe they're like, genuine, okay, let's get forward.
Maybe they haven't listened to Nebraska yet.
What was Nebraska?
The Doctor.
Oh, that was Nebraska?
Or maybe it was North Dakota. I feel like it was one of those states.
It was one of those states.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes we agree on everything, but when we don't agree, we really don't agree. Okay, so DC. There are nearly 1,500 items lost every month on the metro.
I believe it.
Oh, for sure.
I'm surprised it's not more.
Yeah, well, at first I was honestly not expecting to say month, but then when I saw month, I was like, that actually checks out.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, think about it. It now goes all the way out to the airport out here.
Yeah.
So it's now further than it's been before, and it goes all over DC and up into Maryland.
Mm-hmm.
It does not go to Frederick.
It does not.
Not anywhere fucking close. Residents in DC drink more wine per capita than residents in any other state. Technically, they're not a state.
No, I know. But there's no other things to compare to, so they can compare to other states.
I know, I'm just saying, they're not technically a state.
Yeah, I know. I didn't say they were a state.
Yeah, but you said any other state.
Yeah. Than any other United State.
But DC is not a state.
I know. Than would I have put residents in any state? See, that doesn't sound right.
No.
There was no other way to word that sentence.
I'm just saying it to piss you off.
You're so annoying.
I'm like, oh, I could get her on this one.
This is when I need a squirt bottle. Just, I hate you.
This is what you get for the whole Reese Witherspoon last time. This is my payback.
That was so funny.
Oh, it was good. It was just, and it was that was so authentic. You were good because I was listening back to it. And you were like, actually like, oh, you were like, oh my gosh, I forgot to tell you. So I genuinely believed you. I was like, oh my gosh, she's freaking out about something. You did a good job.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Excellent.
But so the did you know I was about to say.
Oh, yeah.
DC has more residents than Montana and Wyoming combined.
Oh, yeah. Hasn't there been like talks, or not talks, but like people in DC want to become a state?
Yeah. But then people also think it's never going to happen. That's why when January 6th happened, it took so freaking long for police forces to show up because they're not a state, so they technically don't have the ability to do that.
I mean, it's the same bullshit as to why Puerto Rico and Guam don't get the same resources, even though technically we own them. So
they're technically U.S. citizens and they can't even vote.
I was going to say obviously they can vote for elections in Puerto Rico. I thought they could vote for the presidential one. No, not that one either.
Nope.
Okay. Well, that's why DC's license plate says taxation without representation.
Yep. Exactly.
I feel like you told me that.
I don't know. I feel like that's definitely more up your wheelhouse of knowledge.
It was not knowledge that I already knew. Someone definitely told me at some point. I think it was a Jeopardy question.
Oh, that would make a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there is a crypt under the Capitol building that was built for George Washington to be buried in. Never mind. Sometimes I have thoughts that I want to say out loud. But when we're recording in this kind of situation, not all of my thoughts need to be said out loud. I'm going to tell you this one, obviously, because I have to now. But like, for example, my eyes didn't move down to Washington. I just naturally said George Washington.
Oh.
Because that's just automatic. And that's what I thought in my head was that, oh, your eyes didn't even go there. And you knew it was George Washington. And I was going to share that thought out loud. And then I realized that's not something you have to share out loud.
And I figure a lot of people, when you talk about DC building, you see George, the next thought is Washington.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway. I told you it was not needed to be shared aloud. So if you ever see me go, it's because I register. No. That's what we keep to be an internal thought. Anyway, they wanted to bury old George in there, but instead he wished to be buried at Mount Vernon because that's where he was from and lived. Yeah, makes sense.
So now there's just an empty crypt under the Capitol building.
Because I think also too, I saw somewhere where like he didn't want to do it too because it's like that's very kingish kind of thing to do.
Oh.
And I know that he was really like...
He was a humble dude.
Yeah, he was one of those people that, he's the quietest in the room.
Oh.
And so what's funny though about that is that I've heard from other people who are fascinated by him. Trust me, I do not know this much about George Washington on my own. But
secretly studying George Washington at home.
Right. But he was one of those people that, like, because they don't feel like they need to always put a word in, everyone thought he was so wise.
Oh.
And so that's like one of the reasons that they really wanted him to be president. Not that he was necessarily stupid by any means, but there was definitely kind of this, what's it called?
Aura.
That, like, about him with that, like, oh, you know, when he does speak, it's
profound.
Right, exactly.
Interesting.
He also did warn people that if we have political parties, not going to be good.
Huh.
So if you really want to get down to what our founding fathers wanted, go look up that quote by George Washington.
Interesting. But no one will because...
No. Because, again, we're arguing with the people who already agree with us.
Right, exactly.
Anywhooser. This building also has a nuclear fallout shelter under it, which is under the crypt. Wow.
Yeah. Ew.
Also, fuck them for having a fallout shelter to save themselves.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Bitches. The White House has the White House has had some interesting pets living here, but there have been not one, not two, but 3 alligators who have lived in the White House. Don't tell my mom. She's very scared still. The first belonged to John Quincy Adams, and the other 2 belonged to Herbert Hoover's son, Allen. So he had 2 alligators. Interesting.
Alligators are less aggressive than crocodiles. I learned that at work from a friend who
I'll tell my
lives
mom
in Florida.
that and see if that makes her feel better.
Okay. You should.
So the Library of Congress apparently has top secret FBI interrogation manual. This was also the same Library of Congress that had, like, some sort of clue in one of the national treasures. I think it was like, maybe it was the Declaration of Independence or something.
Something like that.
Something like that. So apparently the person who wrote this manual applied for a copyright, and by law, anything that is copyrighted must be available to anyone who has a library card and wants to read it at the Library of Congress.
So it's an copyright interrogation manual.
Oh.
It's just a weird fact. Like, it's an interrogation manual, but it's a copyrighted one.
Okay, there we go. The library is also the biggest library in the whole wide world. Oh. If the wind blows at least 30 miles per hour, the Washington Monument will sway about 125th of an inch. Did you know that 0.125 is 1/8?
Interesting.
0.125. That's a little sing-song we would have.
Oh.
We'd sing so that our kids, when they were having to do right equivalent fractions and decimals, they could remember 1/8. DC receives more rain annually than Seattle does at 39 inches a year. Have you ever noticed because we're as close as we are, that people who are further, like, closer to DC, they'll talk about, like, a really bad storm?
Yes.
And I'm like, I mean, yeah, it wasn't, like, great, but it wasn't. But
yeah.
then you see, like, all the news articles of, like, oh, a tornado was seen.
Mm-hmm.
And
I mean, that recently happened.
Yeah. And I'm like, we're not that far.
I know.
It's weird that, you know what I mean?
Yeah. No, I absolutely do.
Okay, good. I'm glad you also have that same thought. Finally, we're meshing now.
There we go. We got it.
All of the streets in DC have letters, but there is no J Street.
Yeah. You don't believe me, do you?
No, not about the J Street, but all of streets in DC have letters.
Yeah, there's like A Street, B Street, C Street.
Yeah, but it's not all the streets.
All of the letters in the alphabet are streets in DC.
That would have made more sense.
Okay, most of the streets, some of the streets, all of the letters of the alphabet.
Technically, all of the streets do have letters because they spell
then
a
I'm
word.
not wrong. But all of the letters of the alphabet are on streets in DC.
Except for J.
Except for J.
Wonder why.
I don't know.
Because there's definitely K, L, and M, because those lead into Georgetown.
Yeah, there was a reason, but I forgot why.
The National Cathedral has a Darth Vader gargoyle.
Yeah.
Like the one in Georgetown? Is that the National Cathedral?
I think so. Whichever is the national one. Yeah, there's a little Darth Vader gargoyle. Yeah.
I want to see that. There are catacombs in DC. They are under the Franciscan Monastery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Of the Holy Land in America.
That's the name of the place. The Franciscan Monastery of the Holy Land in America.
Is that the... No, that's not in DC. We're not going to finish that.
Were you thinking of the Mormon temple?
Nope, I wasn't. Nope. Took it back. I was not. Answered my own question. Thank you. Franciscan monks built them because they couldn't afford to go see catacombs in Europe, so they made their own. I did read about this when I was trying to find something for
Did
DC.
you?
Yeah, because travel was obviously way more difficult back then.
And it's kind of sad. It's like, well, we can't afford to go there, so let's make our own.
Yeah. Kind of dark.
Yeah. Yeah, very dark.
Like, knowing what they are,
Mm-hmm.
interesting that they purposely would want those.
Right.
There's a conspiracy theory that surrounds DC.
Shocked.
It suggests that
Pierre.
Sorry, I started already looking at the next one because I knew I wasn't going to get that, and I just said, fuck Pierre.
Puree. L'Enfant. Like L'Enfant Plaza in DC?
See, that's not what I heard. L'Enfant Plaza. Because you can't understand jack shit on the metro.
No.
Like,
we're approaching.
But I thought it was L'Enfant Plaza. Like, I don't know. L'Enfant.
I don't know. Either one sounds good. They both sound...
A French dude.
Yep.
And there's a plaza named after him. Was a member of the Illuminati, and that in all of his designs around the city, he tried to incorporate demonic symbols. One of those being an inverted pentagram that points towards the White House. The conspiracy theorists suspect that this is meant to point the devil towards the White House. Isn't there something, too, with the $1 bill?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't remember what that one is.
It's like you fold it a certain way or something.
I think it's if you fold the 5.
Oh, is it the 5?
It's whichever one has the Lincoln. What's
That's 5.
Yeah, the 5.
But there's definitely also like a conspiracy.
Oh, yeah, there is.
With the 1.
It's saying that like
it's like the pyramid, right?
Yeah. It has like the little pyramid, and up at the top is the eye. And they're saying that's like the Illuminati symbol.
Right. Okay, that's what it is.
Yep. And then apparently there's like a little spider hidden somewhere in like the drawing on the back of the one.
This is a problem because nobody ever carries cash anymore, so we can't fact check this.
Nope.
There's a ghost cat that lives in the Supreme Court. It also, they have said, also lives possibly in the White House.
Oh,
those 2 places. And this is because there are random paw print marks just outside the chambers.
That's cute.
Bill Nye, Louis C.K., Marvin Gaye, Samuel L. Jackson, and Stephen Colbert are all from D.C. I did not know Bill Nye was from around here.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool.
Each time I read about it, I'm like shocked again. I'm like, oh my God, Bill Nye.
Not that, obviously you hear about celebrities being from Michigan and Texas and all these other places. But then it's like anytime you hear that someone's from here, you're like, what? Nobody's from here.
Right.
Even though this is a major metropolitan area.
I know. Where so many people are from.
I'm like, no one's from here. This is so weird.
I read this really funny like post one time, and someone was like, oh, America and Bill Nye is so weird. They were like, I had never seen it before. And our teacher started Bill Nye. Half the class is chanting, Bill, Bill, Bill. The other half is singing Bill Nye, the science guy.
Yeah, there's nothing that humbles you quite so quickly as your students saying, Miss Nell, did you watch Bill Nye when you were a kid? Yes, I did. Wow, he's that old? Sure is.
Yes, he is.
Nothing fucks you up as a kid than watching something that's older and then seeing the person and they're so much older.
Yeah.
That shit fucks you up.
Yeah.
Although his show on Netflix is really good.
Yeah, I did hear that.
But I don't think it's kid-friendly.
No.
Because I think some people say bad words sometimes.
Yeah. As he got older, I think he moved away from like kid-friendly and kind of was like adults. Because we're the ones who grew up with him at that age. And so he's like, I am still talking to you and now you're old.
Yes. I was wondering the other day when when you click on a TV and if it's, a streaming, they'll have like suggestions or movies that have come out that are now on whatever. And I'll see like, the Emoji Movie and like things like that. And I'm like, I know my generation thinks that the things that we watched when we were younger were Chef's Kiss, you're never going to get this kind of television again.
Right.
And that all the shit today is most of the shit today is ripped off from whatever the hell we did when we were kids because no one can think of anything else.
Yep.
But when there is a new idea, I'm like, really? That's the best we could come up with?
Yeah.
Because I feel like, okay, the Emoji Movie reminds me a lot of the Inside Out with like the feelings. I'm like, didn't we just have one of those?
Yeah.
It's the same thing.
It is.
Or like a Wreck-It Ralph with the internet. And I'm like, are the kids who are watching this thinking the same thing that we are? Like, oh my God, this is amazing. And then
probably
when they grow up and the same thing happens and remakes of all their things get remade, are they be like, this was so great. You're never going to have great television.
Probably. I mean, it's just like our parents were like, our music was the best and all new music is stupid. And then we're like, oh yeah, your music was pretty good, but our music was the best. All music is stupid. And now, people are like, your music's old. Our music's the best.
The thing that gets me about that is because I feel like our generation is a lot better at being like, we recognize what the things that we like and where they came from, and we're happy to acknowledge them. But this is better for sure.
Yeah.
There's, music that comes out, I feel like has a lot of 80s vibes to it.
Now.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
Exactly. And so it's like, it's the natural cycle of things.
Yeah.
And especially with more technology, you're going to have access to more things.
Mm-hmm.
So more things are going to come back. Like, unfortunately, the early 2000s. And oh my God, I have to tell you this story. Okay. So when we were out, we were sitting at a table and we had some extra chairs because it was just the three of us. And a guy comes over and he asks if he can just sit down. And we're like, sure. And so found out that he went to JMU.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, okay. And he was in a fraternity there. And I was like, oh, wait. And our friend Jacob was there. And I was like, wait, we know somebody that's in that. And my cousin also knew somebody that was in that. And so she asked about her person. And he's like, oh, yeah. And then I finally remembered the name. So I asked him about my person. And he was like, no, like, I don't think so. I said, how old are you? 22. I said, oh, no, you wouldn't know him.
Oh my God.
It hurt. There would be never a point in their lives when they would have been at the same.
Ew.
I felt so uncomfortable. I was like, well, this sucks.
I don't like that at all.
Anyway, that was my story that I wanted to remember to tell you because he went to JMU.
Oh. Yeah. I wouldn't have known him because, again, he graduated many, many years after I did.
Yeah, no, I pretty much.
It doesn't even look like the same campus anymore.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't doubt that at least.
I drove around once and I was like, I don't know where anything is.
Hopefully, I think Radford's small enough that it can only change so much.
Yeah, no, JMU's drastically different. It was so hurtful. We visited Nora's cousin in JMU. And we were like, oh, we want to go out with you. And she's like, okay, great. And we were like, but what are like the new bars? Like, what new things they have here? And she was like, well, for your age group, I think you'd like this. And I was like, oh, ow. And we all looked at her like, excuse you?
Your age group?
Uh-huh. We couldn't go to like the cool bars. We had to go to like the old people bars.
Anyway, what's the deal, banana peel?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so quick top of the notes trigger warning, death, obviously. But the main thing is there is death of a child involved in this story.
Mine also has children in it. Not a death of one, but...
Yeah, so a terrifying crime that occurred in a Woodley Park mansion in D.C. would soon become known as the D.C. Mansion Murders, when a mother, father, son, and housekeeper would be found dead. The mayor of D.C. would go on to describe it as an act of evil. So on May 19th, 2015,
Oh my God, this is recent.
Yeah.
Oh shit.
Yeah, 8 years ago.
Okay.
May 19th.
Ew, that was 8 years ago?
Yeah. I know.
I don't like that.
Nope. But so 8 years ago in 2015, on May 19th, Washington, D.C. firefighters responded to a call. No, wait. That's wrong. It shouldn't have been May 19th. I promise you I reread this. Okay, so on May 14th, 2015.
You know what? 9s, 4s, easily confusable.
Thank you.
They're basically the same number.
Yeah, exactly. So on this date, Washington, D.C. firefighters responded to a call at a multi-million-dollar mansion in the 3200 block of Woodland Drive, Northwest in D.C. So this area is known as an elite section of D.C.
Is it like Georgetown area?
That's a really good question. I don't know. I don't know D.C. that well.
Well, like neither do I. And anytime we're like, oh, we're going to go out, and it's like, oh, we're going to go to Northwest, Southwest, Southeast, whatever. And
I think you just avoid the Souths.
Right. But I'm like, I know that there's something that is rich and something that is not rich.
So this is definitely the something that is rich.
And you said north?
Northwest.
So maybe it is north.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that's kind of near Navy Yard-ish. Is that? I don't know.
Oh, so that's the opposite side.
I could be totally wrong. I'm not even going to say anything else because I could be wrong.
Okay.
So this is an area that houses many of DC's rich and powerful.
Huh.
So kind of similar-ish neighborhood like this one.
It's got to be Georgetown then.
It must be, but this is like where Joe Biden lives. In this area. Minus the White House. But like this is like his neighborhood, I guess, when he's living in DC. I don't know. They kept saying Joe Biden's house a lot. So Not the White House, but like his house. The Savopoulos family lived here and consisted of Amy, the mother, who was 47, Savas, the father, 46. So his name is Savas Savopoulos.
Are they Greek?
Yes. Philip, the son, who was 10, and Veralicia Figueroa, the housekeeper, who was 57.
Figaro.
That's how I knew how to pronounce her name. The family was very well off, with the 3 Savopoulos children all attending very prestigious private schools.
Of course.
But they didn't seem to be one of like your bad wealthy families.
Okay.
They were a truly loved family within the community. Amy and Savas were both philanthropists, donating money to different charities. It is said that they had donated...
Donald Trump has a charity and he's a shitty person.
He's just a shitty person in general. These 2 were nicer.
Okay, let's hope so.
So it is said that they donated at least $100,000 to the National Cathedral School. So, National Cathedral, wherever that was. Savas worked as the CEO for his company, American Ironworks, and in his free time, he trained in martial arts. He was actually in the process of opening a new martial arts studio in Chantilly.
Huh.
Yeah, right down the corner.
We're here.
We're here. Amy was active in the community and in her children's schools. She helped organize school fundraisers. She was also known for hosting parties for their friends and neighbors.
I always had hoped growing up that I would end up being those people to have like house parties. Not like house parties, but dinner parties.
I want to so bad.
Right?
I want to host so bad.
Mm-hmm.
We'll do it. Yeah, we'll co-host.
Need more space.
Well, not here. My coworker's like, are you going to have a housewarming party? I said, I don't have a lot of space. I said, we can do it in small groups.
Okay, group 1, your time starts now.
Please be out in 2 hours.
Yes.
Philip, their son, was only in 4th grade, and he attended an elite all-boys school. He was also really into go-kart racing. He would actually travel around the country for racing competitions.
That's kind of cool.
That is really cool. He loved.
Do you think that's how like race car drivers start, is with go-karts?
I could see it. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
I had one of those powered like little take cars when I was younger. Where it was like a battery-powered car that you drive. My parents like did a whole obstacle course, and I had to drive it to get my license.
That's adorable.
It was very cute.
That's really fucking cute.
I was not very good, but it was very cute.
I mean,
don't say it.
I didn't.
So he also loved Harry Potter. Hey.
Naturally.
Formula One racing and baseball. And Vera Lisa Figueroa, who went by Vera, had come to the U.S. in 2012 from El Salvador. While in El Salvador, she was living in extreme poverty and knew she needed a better life for her, her husband, and her 2 kids, so they moved to the U.S. She worked hard, sending money back to her family that was still in El Salvador while providing for her family here. She and her husband, Bernardo Alfaro, were actually saving up to hopefully move back to El Salvador one day to be with family again, but be better off while there. So because of what our show is, clearly a crime occurred, like I said. But we are going to start with a timeline of the events of that crime and what led up to this act of evil.
Okay.
So I got this main timeline from NBC Washington 4. Some information added in there was from ABC News.
Oh my God.
And the other sources I used throughout my research peppered in here as well.
Watch that news channel.
Yeah. So May 13th. Vera Figueroa, who I'm going to start calling Vera from this point on.
Okay.
The housekeeper, usually finished up her day around 3 p.m. So Nellie, the family's second housekeeper, got a little concerned when 3 p.m. rolled around and Vera was still working. So how it sounded to me was like Vera would end at 3, Nellie would kind of come from 3 until a little bit later in the night, then they would both go home. But sometime in the early evening, Vera and Savas, so the husband, drove to his new martial arts studio in Chantilly, Virginia, as he was getting ready for a grand opening. He had planned to stay until about 7 p.m., and Vera was going there to kind of help. So
when this other lady showed up, did she like see the housekeeper's car?
I'm not sure how she knew that like she was still there.
Okay.
But somehow she did.
Okay.
So at about 5:30 p.m., Amy called Savas and asked if he was able to head home. He was going to stay till 7. She's like, I need you home now. She had plans to go out and needed him to head home to watch their son while she went out. Apparently, her son had been injured earlier that day after a go-kart accident, so Savas had to come take care of him while Amy went out. Some reports said that he just got a little cut up. Other reports said that he actually had a concussion.
Oh.
So someone needs to be there. Again, he's also 10.
Also 10, yeah.
So about 9 p.m., Nellie, the family's second housekeeper of over 20 years, gets a call from Savas, which she wasn't able to answer at the time. So she ended up actually listening to it the next morning on May 14th.
Okay.
But this is what the voicemail said. So Savas told Nellie that she didn't need to come into work tomorrow, May 14th. First off, this was kind of weird to Nellie because she's been working with this family for years.
Yeah.
And she's worked every Thursday and has been working every Thursday for years. And now they're like, hey, you don't
Does she only come
in
one?
I don't know when, like, I didn't know her schedule, but
Okay.
she made it very clear that, like, May 14th was a Thursday and she worked Thursdays.
Okay.
So it was weird that they're like, hey, like, you don't need to come in.
Right.
Savas went on to say that Vera would be spending the night at the family's house. Amy was actually really sick in bed. She didn't end up going out after all because she had gotten sick that afternoon and was staying home. So Vera was also staying to help take care of Amy and Philip because Philip was injured. So Amy's the mom, she's sick. Philip's the son, he's injured. Vera, the housekeeper, is going to stay overnight to take care of both of them.
And I'm assuming Dad goes to work.
Dad's going to be there too, but I guess,
Why overnight then?
I don't know. Savas continued that Vera's cell phone would be dead, and they didn't have a charger for her to use to charge it. So he asked Nellie if she would mind telling Vera's family what was going on and to not expect her home that night because she would be staying the night at their house.
This is already so odd.
I know.
Because if this housekeeper has been working with you for years, and she sounds like she works the evening shift, why wouldn't you just have her stay the night?
Well, Nellie, the other housekeeper, found this weird. So first,
Nellie sounds smart.
Yes. So first, the whole being told not to come in part.
Yeah.
And she also thought it was weird that Vera was being asked to spend the night.
Yeah.
So she said in all the years that the two have been working for the family, and they've been close, they have never been asked to stay the night. They have never stayed the night. Like, that's just not kind of part of their job.
Right.
Like, that's just not something they do.
I could see it if, like, the whole family was sick.
Right.
But if Dad's still okay.
Yeah. So she's kind of like,
Yeah.
She also thought it was weird that Vera's phone would be dead and there would be no way to charge it.
Yeah, that was...
Like, in this day, who doesn't have an iPhone and who doesn't have a charger?
Especially I forgot this was 2015.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, who doesn't have those things?
Yeah.
A Domino's pizza was also delivered to the house this night as well, which Domino's later did confirm. So it's May 14th. That morning at 9:30 a.m., Vera's husband arrived to the Savapolis' house and knocked on the door. He knew Vera had been staying the night because Nellie had told him, but she should have been home by now. So he waited for a bit, but no one answered. He believed, though, that he heard someone shuffling around inside. So he was like,
So why did her husband go there?
Because she hadn't come home yet.
Nellie.
Vera.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you said Nellie's husband.
No, Vera's husband. Sorry if I said Nellie's husband. It's Vera's husband.
Okay.
And so because she didn't come home last night, he knew she wasn't. But now it's 9:30 in the morning. Like, she should be home by now.
Makes a lot more sense now that I have the correct husband.
Yes. So knowing that this wasn't really getting him anywhere, he started to walk to the bay windows on the side of the house to kind of like look in and see what's going on.
Yeah.
But as he's walking around to the windows, he received a call from Savas. So Savas told him that his wife, Amy, Savas' wife, Amy, was very sick, and Vera had taken her to the hospital and was staying at the hospital with her. So Vera's no longer at the house. Amy's apparently no longer at the house.
And as soon as he starts to go kind of look around, he gets that phone call.
Yes.
Interesting.
Around this time at 9:40 a.m., Nellie, the other housekeeper, received a text message from Amy, the wife, that read, quote, "I am making sure you do not come today." Again, reiterating that she was sick. So Nellie was getting concerned at this point, immediately called Amy back, but the call went straight to voicemail. She then texted Amy back, but didn't get a response. At 1:30 p.m., DC Fire and EMS respond to a fire on Woodley Drive in Northwest. Smoke was billowing out at the windows of the Savapolis' house. When the firefighters finally gain entry, they are met with a brutal and grisly scene before them. They found the bodies of 4 victims. 3 adult victims had been bound to chairs. It was clear they had been beaten. It was believed to be with a baseball bat, and they were all strangled. They also all suffered from blunt force or sharp object wounds. So obviously, Savas, Amy, and Vera.
Right.
The 10-year-old son, Philip, was found in an adjacent bedroom on a charred mattress. It was determined that he had been killed by thermal and sharp force injuries.
Ooh.
I don't know what that means, but that's how it was referred to and everything.
I was like, what, I wonder if something like fell on him in the fire?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
So clearly, the bodies and subsequently the house had been set on fire. Philip's body had been found in the adjacent bedroom where the fire had been largely contained. Investigators found signs that the fire was set purposefully and that whoever had set the fire had planned for it to spread much farther than it actually had.
They always do.
Firefighters found, quote, the presence of an ignitable liquid on the stairs and in the room in which the 3 adults were located. Several matches and a matchbox were found at the top of the stairs. Savas, Amy, and Philip were all pronounced dead on the scene, but Vera was not.
Oh.
She was immediately rushed to Georgetown University Hospital, but, quote, life-saving efforts failed and Miss Figueroa was pronounced dead. The 3 Savapolis family members were buried on June 1st, 2015 at the St. Sophia Greek Orthodox Cathedral Northwest. Vera's body was flown back to El Salvador.
Okay, wait. I just want to make sure I have all the facts straight.
Okay.
Okay.
You need like little figurines.
Again, we need a bulletin board and sticky notes and red string. My case, you're going to feel the same way.
Oh, God.
So we have the 3 family members. They were found tied up.
The 3 adults.
I'm sorry, yes. The 3 adults were found tied up in a room, badly beaten and strangled.
Yes.
And then the boy was found possibly beaten
in an adjacent room, beaten with thermal and sharp force injuries. So I think somewhere I read that he had been stabbed.
Okay.
That's the sharp force injury.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously all the stuff beforehand with the weird, like, don't come.
Mm-hmm.
And how long did they tell the person not to come?
For a day.
Was it just a day?
So it would have been this May 14th when the fire happened.
Okay, so it was just the next day.
Yeah, the next day.
Got it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Okay. I got it.
And so a really sad thing about Vera, everything is sad, but her family said they were very excited for her to return, but having her return this way was heartbreaking.
Oh my God.
I know. And if I felt the sadness, everyone else had to. So sometime after this, Nellie, the housekeeper, was at another family's house who she worked for in Virginia. So she had the two jobs. She received a call from Savopoulos' mother who was checking in on Nellie due to the house being on fire. So the mother had no idea that like she wasn't there that day because she always worked Thursdays. And that was the first time Nellie heard about the fire.
Oh.
So she immediately headed to the Savopoulos' house where she was questioned by police once she arrived, obviously. And then when they let her through, she was met with the horrible scene before her.
Oh my God.
Naturally, an investigation was launched. So that following day, police found surveillance. So this is May 15th.
Okay.
Police found surveillance footage from just after the murders. It showed a man carrying a bag running in an alley behind the family's home. The Metropolitan Police Department released the footage of this man wearing a hooded sweatshirt running near the scene to the public. They called this man a person of interest.
I have a question,
Yes.
and I don't know if you know the answer to this. Is their house, like, is it like a standalone house, or is it like...
It's considered a mansion. Like, it was a $4.5 million mansion. I know. So I think it's, like, probably a standalone.
Yeah.
I'm picturing it in a community because when I was reading about this house, it has, like, multiple rooms, multiple bathrooms. And this is a neighborhood where, like, cops and security kind of do patrol it. So I'm thinking it's in a houses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know, like,
because when you think of DC, you don't think of houses.
Exactly. I've seen, like, there's some houses, like, near the embassies that is a house.
Yeah.
And so I wasn't sure if this was in a area where you could have houses or if it was more city-like.
I think it's houses, but we can always kind of check.
We can look it up later.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Write that down. Remember for us to look it up.
Okay. I was about to try to write the last name of the person. And I decided. I almost said Greek house.
So this man they caught in the video, they said was a person of interest. And then they also released footage of something else. So Amy owned a blue 2008 Porsche. This was reportedly seen at the house the previous morning around 10:30 a.m. sitting in front of the house. So right before the fire. Same day as the fire, they saw it at 10:30 a.m. While police in Prince George's County, Maryland, a county that neighbors where the murder took place, found Amy's Porsche abandoned and burning in the parking lot of St. Christopher's Episcopal Church in New Carlton, Maryland, only 13 miles from their home. This footage was also released to the public. So now it's May 19th.
Of the car in the
both
parking
of the
lot?
car,
or...
yes.
Okay.
Both of that and of this mystery man.
Okay.
So May 19th, investigators said that they were making a lot of progress in the house, looking through and finding evidence despite the fire. Metropolitan Police Department Chief Kathy Lanier said that she believes they will spend 7 days to just recover evidence from the home. So
it will spend what?
7 to 10 days to just recover evidence. So that's what they're doing for like a week. She said, quote, "A large part of what we do now is puzzle piece after puzzle piece. There's digital evidence that has to be recovered, lots and lots of videos that have to be reviewed. There's DNA and other forensic evidence that has to be gathered, preserved, tested." So obviously they knew from the firefighters that an accelerant had been used, leading them to believe that this had been arson.
And they thought, have they confirmed that it for sure started in the boy's room? Or the room that the boy was in? No.
We don't get into that.
Okay.
But so they know it's arson because there was the accelerant. Right. And they also know, like, the family had been found murdered. So this is not just an accident. Like, something happened here.
Right.
And all of that looking...
If I was trying to make it look like an accident, I wouldn't have left them tied up.
Right. But even, like, the whole stab wounds and the strangulation, like...
Well, and if they also caught the house on fire properly and it burned the way it was supposed to, it probably would have been harder to do that.
That's probably what they were hoping.
Yeah.
And all of that looking through evidence really paid off when they found a huge clue in the house and some other wild things. So the police had been looking through the phone records and phones of the victims. Phone records show that on May 14th, the morning of the fire, there had been numerous calls made between Savas, his assistant Jordan Wallace, a bank, an accountant, and some business associates.
Okay.
The last call being made at 11:54 a.m. So just about an hour and a half or so before the fire department was called. It was around this time that Savas' driver and assistant, Wallace, got in touch with police. He informed them that the night before the murders, Savas had texted him and ordered him to withdraw $40,000. He was instructed to leave that money on the seat of one of the specific cars in the family's garage. He did so on May...
One of.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So he did so on May 14th around 10:30 a.m.
Okay.
Police confirmed that the driver did as he was told, though I'm not 100% sure how they did confirm this because the money was no longer there.
Was it the blue Porsche that he put it in? No.
I don't think so, actually. That's a good question. That they never said anything about that. So police grew suspicious of Wallace at first, but they looked into his alibi, and he was actually at the martial arts studio getting it ready for its grand opening when the fire broke out of the house. So he was completely ruled out as a suspect. And a big break came in the case when, inside of the home, investigators found 2 pizza boxes.
Yeah, because Domino's was delivered, yeah.
One contained an untouched cheese pizza, and the other contained a partially eaten pepperoni pizza. And with this being 2015 and it being a half-eaten pizza, there was DNA left for the detectives to use.
Oh.
Apparently, they also found the same DNA on a knife in the basement and a hair in the bedroom.
Oh.
Yes. But so...
That obviously didn't belong to anybody, like any of the victims. Yeah.
So we're going to focus on this half-eaten pizza.
Okay.
So the first thing the police did was speak to Domino's. It was... And then the whole time, like, I hate to say this, but the whole time I'm writing my notes, I'm like, damn, pepperoni pizza would be...
We could get pizza.
We might want to do pizza.
We could get some pizza.
I wouldn't mind getting pizza.
So let's get some pizza.
Okay. So it was found that the pizza had been ordered by a woman believed to be Amy.
Okay.
She placed the order by phone and had paid with the family's credit card, giving specific delivery instructions.
Okay.
A report states that, quote, Miss Savopoulos provided she was nursing her sick child and she would not come to the door. She further instructed the delivery person was to place the 2 pizzas on the front porch, ring the doorbell, and leave.
And this is pre-COVID too, so people didn't do that.
Oh, yeah. I didn't even think about that. I was like, that's such a common thing.
Yeah, no, it would have been weird then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next they ran that DNA that they got from the crust of pizza.
Jeez.
So they ran it through their DNA database and got a match. Because with DNA databases, you have to be in the system in order for it to give you a match, meaning that this person had to have been in the system somehow.
Yeah.
That match came back to a 34-year-old man, Darren Dillon Wint. The DNA match launched a regional manhunt with word going out to agencies all over the country who were told to be on the lookout for Wint.
Oh
and it was wild. I looked up in our newspaper subscription thing, and oh my God, Philadelphia, New York, California, Virginia, DC, all over the place, South Carolina, all of these places are reporting on this case.
That's crazy.
And I'm like, I don't know this case. We were definitely at the age where we should have known about this case.
Oh.
Ew, wait. No.
We were in college. We were too far from the city at this point.
Were we able to drink?
No. It's 2015. You couldn't drink yet.
Yeah, we could. I was born in 94.
You could drink in 2006.
15.
Okay, I couldn't drink yet.
You couldn't drink yet.
I could drink at the end of 2015.
Okay. Yeah. So, yeah.
Shit.
Damn.
Oh my God.
So we were definitely old enough we should have been aware of this.
But we weren't at home. We were in college.
Yeah, but still. Holidays.
This happened it happened in May.
Mm-hmm. Summer, vacation.
I don't know. I never watched the news.
I don't either. But so this manhunt launches. An award for $25,000 was being offered to anyone who had information that would lead to Wint's arrest and conviction. It was noted that he was 5'7" and weighed about 155 pounds.
Why are they so short?
I don't know. That's Joe's height. Not that he's short.
Is he?
He is.
It's just you're shorter.
Oh my God. I was talking today to some people about the concert, and they're like, oh, why don't you just go on Joe's shoulders? And I was like, because he's short. And they're like, yeah, but now you'll be a little taller. I was like, yeah, we'll be the size of a normal person.
Just thinking that.
So Wint was last seen wearing a blue hooded sweatshirt, blue jeans, and white tennis shoes. They were able to trace his phone to Brooklyn, New York.
Damn, he made it far.
Somehow, they were also able to get in touch with his girlfriend who lived in Brooklyn and who gave a testimony that confirmed that Wint had been there. But by that Thursday afternoon, New York investigators said that they were no longer confident with the testimony that had originally led them to Brooklyn. But later, just a couple hours later, it was confirmed that Wint had indeed been in New York. He had taken a bus to New York to visit his girlfriend, who lived in the Canarsie section of Brooklyn. He then hired a private livery cab. I've never heard of that before.
Private who?
Livery? Livery? Livery. I've never heard of that before. But he hired a private one of those cabs to take him back to DC, either late the Wednesday night or early Thursday, which he paid for in cash.
Okay.
Cash that was believed to have been taken from the victim's house.
Oh.
Authorities had arrived in New York right after Wint had left, just narrowly missing him.
Oh, damn.
But he's still being tracked and traced, and on May 21st, they had that he was in College Park, Maryland.
I'm telling you, I never understand why people stick around after they commit a crime.
No!
Like, I just don't get it.
Get on a plane and leave. Like buy your plane ticket way ahead of time.
Confident that you could get away with it, just fucking leave.
Yes. So they followed him then to a Howard Johnson, which is a hotel. I had to look that up. I didn't know what that was. So this is when they started to formulate a plan. So they know he's in this Howard Johnson. They're going to go and they're going to arrest him. That plan quickly changed when they saw Wint walk out of the hotel with a few other people. He got into a sedan with one other guy and two women. Two other men got into a box truck, and the two cars left the hotel. The 20 law enforcement vehicles that had been strategically placed around the building all pull out and started following the two vehicles north along Route 1. But they were,
that's not obvious.
They were being very discreet about it.
Okay.
They didn't make it obvious. They were, I guess, strategically placed in places, so it wasn't obvious.
So it wasn't like 20 cars moved out of and just followed them.
It's like OJ and all the cars. So they didn't want the two cars, one with Wint, to know that they were being followed. So they kind of followed at a far enough pace to like keep an eye on the car. Finally, officers found their opportunity to stop the two vehicles using a tactical move.
Ooh.
No one was hurt, which is what their plan was. And the vehicles were stopped at 11 p.m. near the Maryland-D.C. border in the 1000 block of Rhode Island Avenue Northwest. Wint was found to be driving the sedan. His brother was actually in the box truck. The cars were searched, and in the box truck, police found a large stack of what appeared to be $100 bills, as well as money orders. Everyone was released except Wint, of course. He was arrested and taken into custody for being a suspect in the quadruple murder.
But they weren't suspicious about any of the other things in the car. Interesting.
Because I guess they were like, well, Wint acted alone, so he's our one suspect.
But what if that wasn't the only crime?
That's not what they were there for.
I can see that.
So now is the time where we have to go over who Wint is.
Okay.
So in a court filing in this case, because he was obviously going to go to trial, so there's a court hearing, his name was spelled Darren Dillon Wint. Another filing said Darren Dellin Dennis Wint. All of these names are spelled differently.
Okay.
So the first one, Darren, is spelled like with one R. The next one, it's spelled with two. Dillon spelled differently. It's all over the place. Stating that this one, the Darren Dellin Dennis Wint, was his true name. But he also sometimes used his brother's name, Stefan. Wint was born and grew up in Guyana, attending high school there. While he lived there, he also worked as a certified welder. He moved to the U.S. from Guyana in 2000 when he was only 20 and joined the Marines that same year. But he was discharged before his training was even done due to medical reasons. It was around this time that we know he was living in Prince George's County, Maryland. Wint had many run-ins with the law and was in and out of the court systems in PG County. Though there were plenty of run-ins, he really only had one real conviction. So it was a misdemeanor assault conviction from 2008 for domestic violence against his girlfriend. He had been sentenced to 30 days in jail for it in 2009. He served his time and then he was out. But though there weren't any other convictions, that doesn't mean that he was an angel.
He didn't go to jail for misdemeanors.
It was an assault.
Oh.
Yeah. So it was only 30 days too.
Okay.
But, so yeah, while there weren't other convictions, he wasn't a great guy.
Right.
He faced other charges for domestic violence, driving without a license and insurance, theft, and other cases of assault. But prosecutors either didn't pursue the cases or he just wasn't found guilty. But in 2010, he was involved in a few different things, one being pretty serious. So the first one, at some point in 2010, he was arrested in front of the American Ironworks headquarters building.
That's where...
Yes. I was just going to say, if this company name sounds familiar, it's because it was owned by Savas Savopoulos.
So he's been arrested in front of that building before.
And Savas was the CEO. I'm not 100% sure of the dates, but by 2015, when the fires happened, Wint was a former employee of the company. So he had been fired at some point.
Oh.
I'm not sure in 2010 if he was working there, if he had been fired. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I don't know his time frame working there.
But at some point he did.
So in 2010, he was arrested in front of the building for carrying a 2-foot-long machete and a BB pistol.
Bruh.
Weapons charges were dropped after he pled guilty to possessing an open container of alcohol.
Really?
See how he's only had one conviction?
The justice system is so fucked.
So here is the, in my opinion, pretty serious one.
Okay.
Also in 2010. There was an incident with Wint allegedly threatening to kill a woman and her 2-year-old daughter. Court papers indicated that the whole incident began when Wint and the woman were returning home after being out at a club. He had been very intoxicated and was using profanity towards this woman and her friends. I guess they had like been talking or something because he had her number. So he later called her and threatened her by telling her that he was, quote, good with a knife and that he wasn't afraid of police.
Jeez. Well, yeah, I don't blame him because nothing ever happens.
Right.
I wouldn't be afraid of them either.
Mm-mm. He reportedly said, quote, I'm going to come over there and kill you, your daughter, and your friends. He then allegedly busted the front window. I always say window shield, and Mom makes fun of me because it's a windshield. And I always say window shield. And that's not what it is.
Huh.
It sounds wrong when I say a windshield. But anywho.
Never. Now I'm going to notice.
You are. And I almost said it. But he busted the front windshield and rear window of the woman's car before breaking into her apartment and stealing her 43-inch TV. He was arrested and charged with malicious destruction of property, which he pled guilty to. So he had that charge, but it wasn't like a big conviction, like didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah.
And again, it was only malicious destruction of property, no threats, none of the like none of that. And then again in 2010, he got into a parking dispute with a woman. It was reported that he got very violent and even threatened the woman and her family, saying that he would, quote, drop them one by one. Over a freaking parking dispute. I get parking in DC sucks. And in the surrounding areas, it's awful. But like, come on.
There are worse things people could do to each other.
Yes.
Like murder.
Right. So just the next day, May 22nd, Wint appeared in court for his first appearance and was charged with first-degree murder while armed. He was ordered to be held without bond while awaiting his actual trial and was also ordered to submit a DNA swab just to make sure, and he did. But before we move on with him, I wanted to go over what we believe actually happened.
Okay.
So we know that Wint was at the house at some point. He ate the pizza, then the family and housekeeper were found murdered and the house was on fire.
Did he make them order pizza?
That's what it seems like. So we remember how Vera was supposed to leave work at 3. Mm-hmm. This is what is believed to have been the start of everything. So her not leaving has led to the belief that someone, assumed Wint, had broken into the house and was holding the family hostage. It is believed that the family was already under control of the intruder at this time. Whoever the intruder was seemed to cover all their bases.
It sounds like it.
Getting Savas to come home early.
Yeah.
Making sure Nellie wouldn't show up.
Yeah.
Telling Vera's family to not expect her.
Yeah.
Making Amy call and order pizza, but making sure the pizza was left outside. Amy not going out with her friends like she originally said.
This definitely sounds like it was thought through.
Mm-hmm. Yes. It is believed that the intruder was holding the family hostage from the 13th overnight and into the 14th. It is believed it was hostage maybe for a ransom, because what else would it make sense for Savas to be on the phone with so many people the morning before the fire?
That's what I was wondering too.
He was talking to his assistant who drove the money over. He was talking to a bank, an accountant, business associates. Like, and $40,000, that's a large amount of money.
Chunk of change.
Like, if your business notices that, your bank and accountant, they're going to flag that.
Right.
So he's probably talking to all these people.
Yeah.
Neighbors hadn't reported anything suspicious from those days and that night, and actually no calls of any kind had been made to authorities until smoke was seen pouring out of the windows of the mansion. Prosecutors believe, quote, all 4 descendants were held captive by Mr. Wint and others until the $40,000 was delivered to the Savopoulos' residence by the witness, the driver.
Right.
After the money was delivered, the 4 descendants were killed. So they believe once they got the money.
You know, and I was going to say, the fact that all 3 adults were tied up, there's no way he did this alone.
That's a big thing that comes into this in a second. So when asked about the intruder...
Yeah, they let all those people go.
Yeah.
Fucking idiots.
So about the intruder aspect, Nellie, our other housekeeper, had some things to say. So she confirmed that she had never seen Wint before. And like I said, she worked with his family for years.
Yeah.
So she was
going to know.
She was well aware of their friends and their family.
Yeah.
She believes that the intruder knew what they were doing and had been watching the family's movements for a while.
I was going to say.
Figuring out what they do.
If you know to call these people to say don't come or come home or whatever.
Right.
You obviously have been watching them.
Right. And telling Vera to like have her family not expect her.
Right.
You know? The family also had a dog named Ginger who helped guard the house. She was an aggressive Labrador watchdog.
Oh.
So Nellie thinks that one of the only ways that this intruder could have gotten into the house would have been through an open backyard gate when Ginger was being taken out for a walk. Because had Ginger been in the house, she would have attacked the intruder before they even had a chance to run or yell.
Yeah.
Police even had to tell the neighborhood, as they were terrified, that this crime seemed to be a very planned one and not a random one at all.
Right.
That the Savopoulos had been personally targeted. Because obviously the neighborhood's like, you know,
absolutely.
This wealthy individual, like, what's going on? So the police are like, you know, unfortunately, you have nothing to worry about because this was targeted.
Right.
So this leads us to, what in the world could the motive be?
Yeah.
As the real motive for this crime has never been made known.
But there for money?
Well, we have theories and we have speculations.
Yeah.
So was Wint a disgruntled employee?
Right.
Was he angry, vengeful, wanted to kill his former boss? Or was he simply trying to rob the rich family and it went a little too far? Or was his home invasion a play for ransom money? that $40,000 was delivered, as the family driver said, and it was no longer there when the police came. Maybe it was a murder for hire plot. One main motive going around, though, is that Wint needed money. He had recently been kicked out of his house and was trying to secure money through this hostage and ransom situation, is kind of what they're saying. But no motive is known, and one will probably never be known. And the other main question that remains...
He won't say?
He won't say. So the other main question, did Wint have an accomplice who helped him commit the crime?
He had to.
He would have had to subdue, torture, and kill 4 victims, 3 adults, 1 man, all by himself.
Yep.
The lead detective in the case wrote in court documents that the crime, quote, required the presence and assistance of more than one person.
Absolutely.
Right. There's just, it's not possible.
No.
There's no way.
Although, Dad wasn't home yet.
Well, then yeah.
And if...
But he came home.
Right, but then if the 2 are already subdued,
then it's
and you
just
catch him by surprise and knock him out.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point. But so again, this is something that we're just never going to know. Probably never going to know, and I'll get to why. So trials and all of that stuff. So Sean Hanover was the first defense attorney defending Wint. But on July 2nd...
First.
Yes. On July 2nd, 2015, Wint dismissed him at a hearing after the 2 had a disagreement over a defense strategy.
Oh.
So after this hearing, when he had dismissed his defense attorney, Judge Rhonda Reeld Winston appointed Wint a public defender and rescheduled his preliminary hearing for July 20th, 2015. Preliminary hearing took place, then Wint went to an actual trial, and that actual trial occurred on February 19th, 2016. So remember back in May of the previous year, he had his first court appearance. This is when he's charged with the first-degree murder while armed and ordered to be held without bond. So this is like kind of going through the motions to set up when his actual trial is going to happen. A date was set for February 2nd, 2017 to begin September 4th, 2018. But opening statements actually began on September 11th, 2018.
Wait, 2000 what?
18.
Even though it was supposed to be...
Well, it happened in 15, and then court things always get pushed.
Yeah.
So his actual trial date was going to start September 11th, 2018.
Okay.
Wint was indicted on 20 felony charges, including 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder while armed, burglary, kidnapping, extortion, arson, and theft, and 12 counts of first-degree murder while armed. And not gonna lie, when it said 12, I was like, how does that work? But it could be that each victim is like a different degree murder, and each thing that he did counts like multiple times.
Okay.
Which I will get to kind of what his final charges were, which makes it it makes a lot more sense.
Okay.
So all of these charges... all of these, because it's alleged that Wint, quote, seized and kidnapped the 4 victims, stole $40,000 through means of extortion, murdered the victims, and set fire to the house. He was also charged with specified aggravating circumstances, including one finding that the murders were especially heinous, atrocious, and cruel. If found guilty, he could face a mandatory 30 years to life sentence without parole for each of the 12 murder charges.
I can't do math that fast.
A long time.
Miss
30
algebra.
times 12.
Yeah, Miss Algebra.
This isn't algebra. This is just math.
Oh, you could just do 3 times 12, which is, what, 36? Add the 0, 360.
Amazing math.
Thank you.
Joe's really good at doing that kind of math. I'll ask him a question, and by the time I pull up my calculator, he has the answer. I don't do it. But so...
couldn't be me.
No surprise. No surprise, Wint pled not guilty. It was noted that...
this one he didn't admit to.
No. So it was noted that throughout the entire trial, he chose not to speak, and he showed 0 emotion. So the Savopoulos had 2 other daughters who weren't home the night that this all happened.
Oh, no.
I know. So they spoke about the love they had for their family and Vera, Wint staring straight ahead the entire time. And while the courtroom was full of those who loved the Savopoulos and Vera, not a single person from Wint's family was there.
Like, not even his brother?
Not a single person was there for him.
Huh.
The defense tried to stick to the fact that there had to be other accomplices, that there was no way he acted alone. They tried to argue that Darren, so Wint, we're going to call him Darren in this little bit, that his younger brother Darrell was actually the mastermind of the whole thing, and that he and his other brother Stefan, were the ones who actually carried out the murders. So they tried to say that Wint had been deceived into going with his brothers and was completely unaware of what was going in the house.
Oh.
They said that he had been set up to take the blame. It was at this point that apparently Wint did take the stand.
Oh.
So very shocking that he took the stand. He told the jury that his brother had tricked him into going to the house, telling him that they were going there for a drywalling and painting job. It was only after they arrived that he was told by his brother that his brother planned to burglarize the house. He said that he did eat a slice of pizza, but once he learned of the burglary plan, he left, and he never saw or even heard the victims. But then this goes against Domino saying that a woman, Amy, called for the pizza to be delivered.
I was just going to say.
Because if Amy called and he's eating the pizza, he saw them.
Right.
He saw her.
Yeah.
He knows for a fact she was there.
I was just going to say, what, did you just be like, oh, you tied them up? Let me just take this piece of
and
to go?
bounce.
Like, what?
That was never mentioned in anything. And as I was reading back over my notes, I was like,
no one said anything about that?
No. So as I'm reading over my notes, I was like, hold up a moment. So yeah. So he's saying he never heard from the victims, never saw them or anything. But then Amy is the one who allegedly is the one who called for the pizza. They believe it was Amy because it's a woman. There's no other women other than Vera,
well, right.
You know?
Except wasn't there 2 women that walked out of the hotel with him?
There were. Don't know anything about that. So it was ultimately found guilty on October 25th, 2018, and sentenced to 4 consecutive life without parole terms. His official charges were 4 counts of first-degree murder while armed in the course of a kidnapping, 4 counts of first-degree murder while armed in the course of a burglary, 4 counts of first-degree premeditated murder while armed.
That's where the 12 comes
Yep.
from. Got it.
4 counts of kidnapping and 1 count each of first-degree burglary, extortion, arson, and first-degree theft. Yes. So he tried to appeal his conviction in December of 2020. They tried to get him a new trial on the grounds that the judge had improperly blocked his lawyers from calling an additional witness. But just 2 years later, December 15th, 2022, because the court moves slow, the D.C. Court of Appeals denied the new trial. They did say that he was improperly denied the opportunity to introduce some exculpatory evidence, but even that wouldn't have
changed the outcome.
It wouldn't have reversed the decision due to, quote, the overwhelming weight of other evidence against appellant.
Mm-hmm.
So you can introduce all the information you want. It's not going to change So not everyone agreed with this decision, and those who have defended Wint, like all of his past attorneys, have all stood by his side.
Oh, interesting.
An impromptu news conference had taken place after the hearing when Wint had dismissed Hanover, like at the very beginning. Hanover told his theory where he believes Wint was set up to be the fall guy by alleged co-conspirators in the case, and he didn't comment on who he believed those co-conspirators were, though.
See, that's kind of what I was thinking, because like him just sitting there and like staring straight ahead, and especially with no one being there for him, like I'm thinking it sounds like he's pissed off that he's sitting here having to
go through this alone.
Because I was like, if he knows who did it, and especially if other people think that they did it with him, I was thinking like, oh, are they going to give him like a plea deal for ratting out these other people? But if no one at the time was saying, you know, you didn't work alone, who else did you work with?
Yeah. And I mean, if he did work with his brothers, he probably, you know, is not going to throw them under the bus. So Hanover was then asked if Wint ever expressed any sympathy for the victims. He said that, quote, Wint was heartbroken like everyone else at their death, and I can assure you he never intended or wanted anybody, them or anyone else, to be harmed, which led to reporters asking Hanover if there was an admission that Wint did have something to do with the murders. Hanover replied, he has never intended anyone any harm. He then ended this by saying, quote, justice will be served, and I am confident that the Public Defender Service will bring out the truth in this matter.
But it didn't.
That sounds very cryptic to me.
Yeah.
It's not, no, he didn't do this. It was, he never intended anyone any harm.
Right. Like, he had made a plan.
Will be served.
He had made a plan, and the plan got fucked up, and then somebody got hurt. But that wasn't his intention.
Right. That's how it sounded to me. Like, it sounded very sketchy.
Yeah.
Maryland defense attorney Robin Ficker, who had represented Wint in most of his criminal cases in the 2000s with all of that stuff he was doing, said that he doesn't believe Wint is capable of this crime that he is being accused of. He said, quote, my impression of him, I remember him rather well, is that he wouldn't hurt a fly. He's a very nice person.
Didn't he get in trouble for assault?
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yes. He said that authorities had arrested the wrong guy in this case and that they have made a big mistake here. Ficker also said that Wint's family told him that Wint didn't even like pizza, so he never ate it.
Okay, well, you can't.
Right. But then he even said himself, I ate a piece of pizza and then I left.
Right.
You know? And Wint's lawyer, Natalie Lawson, insists that her client is innocent and that the case against Wint is, quote, based on speculation and guesswork. Investigators have said in court documents that they do believe more than one person is involved, but as of now, Darren Wint is the only one who has been charged and found guilty. So that is the mansion murder of DC.
Phew.
Yeah. So what do you think? We both are on the same thing that there has to be like someone else.
And like, I don't know, just I'm imagining him in court, and it to me just sounds like he's pissed off, but he's not going to rat them out. He's going to take the fall.
And I'm way too sympathetic of a person. I saw pictures of him and he looked like he had been crying, and I'm like, maybe he is innocent. So I don't know. There are a lot of things that point to it definitely could have been him. And there are a lot of things that point to like, I don't know.
I mean, unless like we're not getting all the information from like investigators, I feel like, I mean, like unless you really have a good bond with your brothers, which it sounds like part of his testimony was saying that they were there.
Right.
So it's not like he was afraid to say, no, this was my brother's idea.
Yeah.
And so it sounds like he just wasn't believed.
I guess they maybe didn't have any evidence for the brothers because Wint's evidence was on the pizza crust.
Yeah.
It was on that knife that was found downstairs, and there was a piece of his hair in the bedroom.
That the boy was in?
Yeah. So he's around. Like, he's very much around.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely no question that he was involved. But if there's no other forensic evidence that points to other people, then of course he's going to be the only one to get convicted for it.
Yeah. So I'm like just shocked that we didn't know about this. I know we don't watch the news, but like I'm just shocked. Because we were like going out to DC at that point. You not yet. You were a couple months behind.
Worst year of my life. I feel like there's a lot of things that happen around here or happen during a time where I'm sure at the time I probably saw it.
Yeah.
But it wasn't a significant enough thing at the time for me to remember that occurred.
That makes sense. Yeah.
So we might have seen it and heard about it.
We might have.
Especially if like the trials are happening later, we might have heard about it once the trial started.
Yeah.
So I feel like that would have happened.
But yeah. So that's the story.
Wow. I thought this was going to be unsolved, so this is interesting.
No, it was solved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
there's some mystery.
As solved as it's going to be. There are definitely mysteries surrounding it and some things that we just don't know.
It sounds very much like the police had this tunnel vision because why... I just don't understand why they let all those other people go.
Yeah. And especially when the box truck was found with money and money orders in it. It's like, wouldn't you find that suspicious?
And it's also like, did anyone check? I mean, I don't know how you could check to see if the money was specifically from...
I feel like you could. Because like the numbers on it.
Right.
Maybe.
And especially like if it was...
Like that's what people do.
If it was taken out, then the bank would have records of what numbers, right?
I would think so. Because they do that thing where like every time they do it, they count the money and then they put it in that little money thing and it goes...
Yeah.
And it tells you how much money. And I assume there's like technology telling you what numbers.
The serial numbers, yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, you see it all the time on the TV ones. They stop looking once they...
There are a lot of things like police could have done. But I mean, it does sound like they did a lot of what they could.
For sure.
They
Absolutely.
actually sound like they were competent in everything.
Yes. There's obviously the case is solved. I'm not saying that this guy is the wrong guy. He definitely was involved. Just sounds like that there was more that they didn't put effort into figuring out.
Yeah.
Which, I mean...
And it's just weird about her Porsche being burned, like...
Yeah.
Abandoned 13 miles away from the house. Like, it's just so many weird things.
Yeah, there's like details that are left just be like, well, this happened, but it's irrelevant.
Exactly.
But it's like, but wait, why did that happen though?
Right, exactly. Yes, there were things where I was like, ooh, this is going to be interesting. And we never get back around to it. And I was like, but what? Like, what?
What about this thing right here?
Yeah.
Whew, that's good one.
Thank you. Thank you.
I enjoyed it.
Too. Thank you. All right, Mackenzie, what do you have for us tonight?
Okay. So, trigger warning before we start that this story does have topics of child abuse and neglect and also child sexual exploitation.
Oh.
So living so close to DC does have its perks. There is plenty to do and the city is full of history. The downside, you're really close to the federal government. This causes horrendous traffic that leaves one questioning their morals. And news media that is predominantly politically related.
Uh-huh.
So what would you say is something that typically accompanies news or information pertaining to politics or the federal government?
Lies.
You're warmer.
Sexual things? Farther.
You know, when I asked this question, I was like, she might not get it, but I mean, it's DC. Think specifically like DC, politics, federal government.
Corrupt?
Oh, I'm sorry. I forgot one more clue.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes.
Sorry. Including, but not limited to, federal government intelligence and or investigation agencies.
Secret. Secrets. A lot of secrets. Lying about secrets. Secrets about lies.
Which makes people come up with...
Lies. Secrets. Conspiracy theories.
There we go. Yes! Did you say conspiracy theories?
I did.
If so, you would be correct.
Finally. We got there eventually.
I know. The U.S. federal government always has conspiracy theories that follow all major news and historical events.
There's like all like websites for when we research our topics. One is just literally conspiracy theories in DC.
Yep. Things like the JFK assassination being orchestrated by the CIA, or more recently, that Jeffrey Epstein didn't actually commit suicide, which that's not a conspiracy theory. That's just truth that they're denying. Some conspiracy theories are as ridiculous as they sound. Some we know will never be addressed and or proven. Some, the FBI likes to throw us citizens a bone every once in a while and to quell our theories. Take the most recent admission about aliens and UFOs.
Right.
None of which really stirred up much commotion because, duh.
Because we already know.
Right. There's another case in which the FBI released classified documents containing information pertaining to the investigation conducted by numerous government agencies. It refers to the FBI, CIA, USCS, DOJ, LMNOP, and XYZ, and now you know your ABCs.
It's really every letter makes up some agency.
They call it the, federal alphabet or something like that?
Oh.
There's a thing. Anyway.
I believe it.
Yeah. So in fall of 2019, the FBI released over 600 documents pertaining to an investigation into a group known as the Finders, and a supposed CIA cover-up of the initial investigation because of supposed ties to the CIA with this group.
Okay.
Before you ask, no, I did not read all of the documents on the FBI's vault page. However, I did scroll and skim and read some. I also looked into official and unofficial reports, both past and present, that discuss the investigation both at the time and later on.
Okay.
So what I'm going to present to you today is the information that is made public about this case and the investigation. I'm going to tell it chronologically, but I've also attempted to kind of tie in the conspiracies that people are thinking, so we don't have to go through the whole thing and then be like, remember when I said this up here?
Oh, okay.
So I tried to tie it in so that like the information went with the conspiracy.
I'm excited.
So you don't have to remember too much.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I will say that this is one of those conspiracies that the more you read about it and look into it, the less crazy it sounds.
Okay.
So in February 1987, Tallahassee police received an anonymous tip that two well-dressed adult men were seen in a park with 6 unkept and disheveled children.
Wait, 2 men?
2 men.
Okay.
Adult men.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right. But they were dressed in like suits and the children were dirty.
Right.
So it was a bit odd.
Just got to show where we stand on this.
Yeah. Had everyone been the equal amount of dirty, it probably wouldn't have been as weird.
Right. Yes, exactly.
So when police arrived and questioned the 2 suspects, reports indicated that one man was very evasive and the other just didn't say anything at all. The man told police that they were taking the children to a school for gifted children in Mexico.
Oh.
The men would later be identified as Michael Hallwell and Douglas Ammerman. They told police about being members of a group called the Finders. Who are the Finders? They are a group of people who live in a commune-style community and live life a bit differently than the status quo.
I can get behind the commune.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh. See, I don't know if I could go with the rest. That's why I didn't say anything else.
Right. And I don't want to share too many of my thoughts because they come up later and I don't want to give anything away.
Oh, okay. Okay.
But yes, surface level, when you hear about this thing, it's like, well, if you only look at it out of context, they don't look like a bad group of people.
Okay.
It's just everything that followed them.
Right. So kind of like a lot of things. You can pick and choose what you like.
And that is very much this case. As you're reading things, you're like, okay, I'm sure if I sat down and looked through all those documents and had myself my little red string and all that, I probably could have seen where that conspiracy is coming through.
Right.
But it's all, you see both sides.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
Like, you can't tell me no, but you can't tell me yes either.
Yeah.
You know? So if you read articles from the 1980s, they will have you thinking that this is a devil-worshipping cult that has children participate in animal sacrifices, among other nefarious ideas.
Everything in the 80s was.
Yeah. Depending on who you believe, this is not an accurate description. According to the group's leader, Marion Petty, the group dates back to before World War II. Marion Petty was a former Air Force Master Sergeant and said he dropped out of school to be a full-time student of human nature.
Okay.
He told the court during a civil suit in the late 90s that, quote, I rented 2 apartments about 55 years ago and opened them up for anybody that wanted to come in. And the idea in my head was that they were going to teach me something about power, money, or sex.
Okay.
When referring to dropping out of school in the 9th grade, he said, quote, I consider my whole life an education. That's all I do is work on my education. I dropped out of school because it was interfering with my education. So here's where we have kind of our first connection to the CIA according to conspiracy theorists. So Elizabeth Voss wrote an article for Mint News and did all the sticky notes and red strings for us.
Okay.
Making these connections between Marion Petty and the CIA.
Mm-hmm.
So she references the infamous MK Ultra project.
Oh, yeah.
Where the CIA experimented with efforts to achieve mind control.
Yes, I mentioned it in one of our past episodes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I think it was the Georgia one where the guys did like the drugs and stuff. Oh yeah, he was the teacher and he dealt with like the effects of like drugs and psychedelics on people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that guy.
No, he was fine. He was fine.
Yeah,
no. But I was like, when I read that, it reminded me of MK Ultra because I've heard many a podcast about MK Ultra.
Oh, I'm sure. I didn't. But that's okay. I figured it was a big deal somewhere. Some more people knew about it. So I didn't go into what it was because I figure I'm just alone in this.
If you need to know, go back and listen to the beginning of my case in Georgia.
There you go. But during the project, Dr. Louis Jolin West used the idea of a, quote, hippie open house that passerbys were welcome to come and do as they pleased and stay as long as they liked, but they had to be okay with grad students observing them and taking notes on their behavior.
Interesting.
Petty would frequently send members to various locations, and they would find out any and all information they could on the subject or the area. For example, when the finders were slowly kind of deteriorating during the late 90s, they were mostly residing in Culpeper, Virginia.
Oh.
This is also the hometown of Marion Petty, and the finders have been there on and off since he started the group.
Oh, wow.
Locals described to a reporter that they would see the finders walking around the streets of Culpeper in their suits and notepads, just writing things down. They would partake in town hall meetings, but would never contribute. They would just sit and observe and take notes. They said that Petty was a regular at the courthouse where he would sit quietly and take notes on the proceedings. One former member described it as, quote, the idea was to explore your own person and discover your own true nature. You can't do that just sitting at a desk or on a couch in a routine way. You have to have some experiences. So Petty was good at structuring experiences from which you could learn. He called himself the game caller. And what that meant was that he'd call a game for you to do something where you'd gain experience. Toby Terrell left the group in the late 90s after he said that the mentality of the group had changed. Terrell had left his family in 1971 to join the group. This infuriated me when I read this. He had been a venture capitalist and CPA making $200,000 a year living in a house in Chevy Chase.
What was he doing? Can we take notes on what his job was?
A venture capitalist and a CPA.
Certified something accountant, right?
Yeah. Those are the people that do taxes.
Damn.
And this was also in the 70s.
So it'll be even more money now. Oh my God.
He also owned a farm in West Virginia and half an oil company. But he told the reporter, quote, I was looking for a more meaningful life.
I mean, I get it. But if I made that much money.
But he just like dipped. Like he didn't even take the family. He had like a wife and kids.
Oh.
And he just left.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hopefully all that money went to his wife.
And I'm like, couldn't you have done those things? Wow. Anyway. So the games the members would play would range from a temp job in a downtown DC law firm to catching a flight to Japan 2 hours notice to gather information on Japanese companies and report it back to Petty.
Because that doesn't cost any money at all.
One article I read said that they describe themselves as a communal, holistic living and learning arrangement. They do freelance journalism, research, and competitor intelligence for a variety of mostly foreign clients.
Okay.
They don't do any work with foreign governments, but the residences that they owned in D.C. would include world maps and bulletin boards. Their Culpeper office supposedly contained computer terminals and clocks reflecting different time zones around the world.
Maybe they just did it to look cool.
So at first glance, it's hard not to say that the finders aren't spies.
Right. I mean, that's what I first thought when you were like, oh, with the CIA. I'm like, oh, so spies.
Right. And maybe a possible CIA front if you go off just this description alone of all these observations that they take of people.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Like spies out taking their notes.
Right. And it's like you're traveling to foreign countries. And
right.
I'm like, and you were trying to say that you weren't?
Every spy movie I have seen.
According to TV.
Yeah.
However, this is none of why they made headlines. Before this, they were a pretty unknown, very quiet. They wanted to be in the background kind of group. They did not want to be known because they were observing.
We already proved we don't know much, but I did not know about them either.
Yeah. So The phone call to Tallahassee police about the 6 children and the 2 adult men is what made the finders national news in 1987. The TPD noted that the children, who ranged from ages 2 to 7, looked, quote, dirty, bug-bitten, underfed, and living in a smelly van.
Oh.
The 2 men's behavior added to police suspicion that something wasn't right about the situation. So here's what the official report described about the 2 suspects. Quote, this writer spoke to suspect number 1, who stated that he and suspect number 2 were teachers from Washington, D.C., and they were en route to Mexico with the children. Suspect number 1 stated that they were going to Mexico to set up a school for brilliant children. When asked about the parents of the children, suspect number 1 became very evasive and stated that the children's parents were in Washington, D.C. Suspect number 2 refused to give this writer any information, and he pretended to faint when he was told he was under arrest for child abuse. Suspect 2 fell face down on the ground and refused to stand up. He was carried by this writer and 2 other law enforcement officers and placed into a patrol vehicle.
That's amazing.
I know.
But it sounds like, what is it, the X-Men or whatever?
Yes, that's exactly
where it's like, we have
too.
this school for special children.
Yep, especially because they're 2 men in suits just sitting in a fucking park.
Right.
Yeah. The officers had the children go with CPS, while the 2 men were sent to be processed at the county jail. They were only able to talk to a couple of the children because they were so young and some were nonverbal.
And how old did you say they were?
2 to 7.
Oh, yeah. So very, very young.
Little babies. When they talked to the oldest of the group, we'll call her Mary, it did not ease their worry that these children were in an unhealthy, maybe even dangerous environment. So here's what the report read, and bear with me because I'm reading from a photocopy. And it's not typed, so it means it's someone's handwriting.
Oh, God.
Yeah. But I've already read it, so hopefully,
you can jog your memory.
Yeah. And then the parts that are redacted, I'll just say redacted.
Okay.
She said that they all lived together at redacted Washington, D.C. Phone number redacted. I asked where their mothers were, and they said in Washington, D.C. I asked them where they were going. They said they didn't know. They were just going different places. I asked where they were staying. They said at campgrounds. They have been sleeping in the van and in a tent. I asked when was the last time they saw their mothers. They said before Christmas.
And what?
February of the following year.
Oh.
Yeah. They said they have no Christmas. They also stated that they do not see their mothers much, that they are being weaned from their mothers. They said they didn't go to school. They said that the 2 men teach them. I asked them what they teach them. They said games and how to read. They said they did things for rewards. I asked what type of things they got rewards for, and they said working. They said they got food as rewards. They said the adults had to do what the game caller said, and the adults told the children what to do. They said they were not allowed inside the house, and they said that they were hungry and had not eaten since the morning. I asked what they had eaten, and it was raw vegetables and fruit.
Oh, did you hear there was this Russian health lady who lived on a raw diet, so she only ate fruits and vegetables. She recently passed away from malnutrition.
Yeah, she's not getting any protein.
No.
Yeah.
And she looked so skinny, and there was a doctor who's like, you need to go to the hospital. And she's like, no. So she would eat a couple pieces of fruit, and she would make a carrots drink and all this stuff. And she had a blog about how healthy food and blah, blah, blah. And yeah, she died of malnutrition.
Yeah.
At 30 something.
There's a reason why they tell you there's 6 food groups.
Right.
You need them all for different reasons.
Yeah. But yeah, her bones and skin was just you could tell there was no protein.
Yeah.
I got enough here.
We got it all in different places.
Listening back to the episode about my big butt. And then you hear me get a chair and it's just, oh.
So, of course, this led TPD to contact Washington, D.C. Metropolitan Police to see if they had any information pertaining to this group and or the children.
Mm-hmm.
The TPD learned that the MBD had already been looking into this group. The MBD, which is the Metropolitan Police Department, but I'm not saying all of that because it's too many words.
Yeah.
And they're long.
Yeah.
So MPD.
Mm-hmm.
At the time, believed that the group may be Satanists or survivalists, but not necessarily criminals.
Okay.
The address that Mary had given them, MPD had already searched in December of 1986.
Oh, okay.
And this is what they reported they found at the back of the house. Quote, a clearing approximately 70 yards behind the house and several stumps surrounding the open area. Several round stones had been gathered near the circle. This practice is sometimes used in satanic rituals and evidence that several persons had gathered in the clearing recently. The rear of the residence is covered from the alley by heavy bamboo growth, save a small entrance to the rear yard. In the rear yard was a very small ornate gravestone propped up against a support pillar for the porch.
Okay.
Yeah. And there were other, like, there are so many documents with this, but there was what they kind of assumed was when they said that the last time they saw their moms was in December, they also talked about of like a fight happening and the police coming.
Oh.
But it's later discovered that they, like, this group might have been being kicked out of their house.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why in December.
Right.
Right. Mm-hmm. And so that's what they think that maybe that was, which is why there was this search already having taken place.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So all of this was occurring while the country's infamous satanic panic. So naturally, this sent the media into a frenzy over this group. And to add fuel to the fire, investigators talking to news outlets about the investigation led to so many things getting blown out of proportion and sensationalized. Mm-hmm. TPD got an anonymous tip that the finders were, quote, brainwashing children, using them in rituals, and that human remains might be buried in a Virginia farm.
So specific.
Right. The MPD executed a court-ordered excavation at the Virginia farm and a search warrant for a warehouse in D.C. owned by the finders.
What farm?
I can't remember where it said, but I think it was somewhere close to Culpeper.
Oh.
Yeah. It had a name, something ranch or whatever, but it didn't give a specific location as to where it was.
Oh, okay.
Authorities found personal documents and computers, which at the time was not a common sight. According to Vice reporter Lauren Thesian, the computers also contained, quote, esoteric communication between members over an early version of email. No bodies were found at the farm, and in addition to the computers, they also found a photo album that had a series of photos that investigators deemed pornographic and others of 3 children and 3 robed men killing and mutilating goats.
Oh my God.
In Florida, a doctor's examination of the children did not rule out sexual abuse of 2 of them, but did not confirm it either. It's inconclusive, I'm assuming.
Okay. That's concerning regardless.
Right. But this investigation ended almost as quickly as it started. The biological mothers of the children were contacted and they made their way to Florida to speak to investigators. They told police that, quote, in late December, the men in the group took the children to Kentucky where they would work on a construction job while the women went to California for temporary work.
And the 2-year-olds are going to be working at a construction job.
Yep.
Okay, that's really safe.
Same with the 7-year-old.
Yeah.
When the men arrived for the project, however, they found that it was at a standstill and instead told the women that they would take the children on an adventure to Florida.
No.
The women understood why police were concerned and agreed that the men hadn't handled the situation appropriately when lying about Mexico. The only logical thing that's said in this entire thing.
Yeah, seriously.
But they said that they had nothing to hide, and they, of course, denied being Satanists.
Mm-hmm.
When explaining the photographs with the slaughtered goat, they said that it was, quote, similar to a biology class and was a lesson for the children about where meat came from.
Uh-huh.
They insisted that the children were well fed and did not believe that the men with them had committed any sexual abuse towards their children. This was apparently enough for investigators in Florida, and they noted that the finders were abnormal but not criminal. The report also stated, quote, probably the 2 men caretakers could have provided a better atmosphere for the children and been more open during the interviewing by police at the scene. The final paragraph written in the report said, quote, regarding the overall lifestyle of the group, it is difficult to compile complete information. The group appears to be one family, with all members having roles which include working, making decisions, and having other responsibilities. As to whether this lifestyle is appropriate and acceptable is a subjective matter. This investigator has learned of no group or individual actions that appear abusive or neglectful. End of report.
And so how many kids were there again?
6.
So 6 kids, 6 women, and 2 men.
No. There was 6 kids with just the 2 men.
Yeah, but with the biological moms, because they're talking about, like, this is a whole family.
I think there was 5 moms.
Okay.
But there's other men. Like, it was not just these 2 men.
Okay. Because it was saying, like, this seems to be, like, a family situation.
Because there's not a lot of people. And these kids were, I think there really wasn't many others besides just them. Because I think they asked them if there was any other kids. And I think they maybe said 1, like a baby.
Mm.
But the moms obviously are all part of the group. Don't know, they didn't mention anything about who the dads were, where they were, and whether or not they were also in this group. But the 2 men were not the fathers of anybody.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I gotcha.
Yeah. So the investigation was closed and all charges had been dropped. The children went back to D.C. with their mothers and no one heard about the finders again. Until 1993.
Until?
This is when the conspiracy shit really hit the fan. A report written by a junior U.S. Customs Service agent in 1987 became public in 1993. He noted that the MPD's investigation of the finders was dropped because it had become a, quote, CIA internal matter and classified secret. This report was brought to the attention of United States Congressman Charlie Rose and Tom Lewis, who instructed the DOJ, Department of Justice for our international listeners, to look into the allegations. So the DOJ conducted an investigation of the investigation to see if there was interference by a government agency.
Naturally.
So the U.S. government was going to investigate if the U.S. government had interfered in an investigation and participated in a cover-up to hide the fact that the U.S. government had ties to the organization.
Wowza. Okay. I feel like they do that a lot, where they investigate themselves.
Or they try to make it sound like, oh, well, because this person's doing it, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get into that.
Okay.
So it was at this point in my research that I started to question which side I was on. Like everything with the government, questions were being answered without actually being answered.
Yeah.
So get your red string and your sticky notes ready.
Oh, God.
So this all kind of came to light because a private investigator or some sort of investigative person that's not official in Florida had been looking into a Montessori school that had possible ties to child sex trafficking and sexual abuse.
Oh, my God.
The investigator insisted that the finders were also connected to this school and stated that when the warehouse was raided, the customs agents found, quote, a totally equipped pornography production studio.
Oh.
This PI somehow managed to get his hands on the report written by the customs agent, and that's what was brought to the attention of the congressman.
Okay.
So in the released FBI documents, one of the first pages that is shared, parts of what this special agent had reported. So this is what it says. USCS, which is U.S. Customs Service.
Okay.
SA, Special Agent, redacted. We know his name later.
Okay.
Claims to observe substantial amounts of computer equipment and documents purportedly containing instructions for obtaining children for unspecified purposes.
Oh.
The instructions allegedly included the impregnation of female members of the community, purchasing children, trading children, and kidnapping children.
Oh, my God. And this was all like in D.C.-ish area? Or was this one?
No, it was in D.C. They just found the kids in Florida.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, but it was all D.C.
Jesus.
Additionally, there's a report written by MPD Sergeant John Stitcher on February 19th, 1987. It's labeled confidential and do not disseminate. What does that mean?
Like distribute.
To other people?
I think so.
Okay. The document is titled Finder's Involvement with the Central Intelligence Agency.
Oh.
This is what the report said. At approximately 50-30 hours.
50-30?
15, sorry.
Oh, I was going to say, what the hell is 50-30?
Well, I'm not used to saying time that way.
And that's 3.
Yes.
Okay. Every other country is like, yeah, it is, duh.
Yeah. February 18th, 1987, Detective Redacted spoke with SA, which is Special Agent Redacted, reference any contact the members of the finders may have with the agency. SA Redacted was guarded but frank with his response. He confirmed that Redacted Isabel, now deceased, was an employee of the agency from 1950 until 1971. When asked if our investigation was treading on anyone's toes out there, Redacted replied, sort of, ... He acknowledged that they have had someone working on the case since it first broke on the news media. He also stated that the agency is aware that during the period of 1969 to 1971, Redacted traveled to Moscow, North Korea, and North Vietnam. And then there's a bunch of sentences that are redacted. Then it says, SA Redacted stated that he would contact Detective Redacted on the 19th to arrange to come to this office for further discussion. As of 14:30 hours, so 2:30, on the 19th, he has not contacted this office.
Can't they just like unredact all this stuff for us? Like, come on.
As a practical matter, what is not being said is as important as what SA Redacted had said. Redacted acknowledged that we are treading on their toes and that they have had someone working on this case since February 5th when it broke. They apparently have had a vested interest in Redacted and or the group. They have not contacted any of the investigating agencies while they have been working on the case. They are also aware that Redacted traveled to prohibited countries during a period of hostilities that could only have been arranged by them. Finally, he stated that, and then there's a couple sentences that are redacted, so we don't know what is stated. But then the last sentence says, this could explain a lot about the group's funding, which we have been unable to document at this point. So whatever it is, Apparently helps with funding.
So do we think it's maybe something in other countries? Because it said, like, he's traveling to these places where we had tension.
So what I'm inferring, obviously, is that because of the connections that are being made, the group is funded by the CIA, which is why they can do whatever.
Oh.
Yeah. So
if there was nothing redacted, we could really figure this out a lot easier.
And it's funny because it's like you do get a good chunk of information, but there's also so much that's taken out that you're like, yes, the information you showed me doesn't sound like there was a cover up, but there's also a lot of shit
there's
you
a
didn't
lot that you're
me.
covering up.
So who is this woman? Well, Petty's late wife, Isabella Petty, worked for the CIA for almost 20 years.
Oh.
Or she worked with them from 1957 to 1971. Some reports of 1961. And she had traveled to North Korea, Moscow, North Vietnam during those periods of no travel.
Was North Korea have they always been really bad?
No, it wasn't until after
So at the time that she would have traveled, they weren't as bad
oh
as
no,
now.
It was 1957. The Korean War was over. They were already split. So yeah, North Korea was bad at this point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You say history things
Sorry.
like I should know. You're like, yeah, it was already this point. I'm like, that means literally nothing to me.
At this point, no bueno.
Okay, so at this point, North Korea, bad.
Bad,
okay.
Yes.
All the places he went, bad.
Correct.
Oh,
it's all communist places. North Korea, Moscow, North Vietnam.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. I'm on track.
Okay. The U.S. Customs agent, who is later identified as Ramon Martinez, stated that the passports that they had found in the warehouse had been turned over to the State Department, which I still don't understand what that is. Doesn't sound like an actual department.
I know.
What state?
Is it the same, the State Department and the Department of State are the same thing, right?
I have no idea.
Oh.
No idea.
Okay.
I just know that it's this, my dad's like, yeah, we're doing work with the State Department. I was like, what is that?
Right, what does that mean?
Who's the state? Which state? This state? Other states? All the states? And what department? That doesn't help.
No, that actually, now that I think about it, that's an awful...
The State Department.
It's why spies are always like, I work for the State Department.
Right.
And it's like, oh, do you?
I'm like, is that like a department store? Do you work in Macy's?
Say state?
I don't understand. So this is what his report read, or at least part of one of them. He said, I was advised that all the passport data had been turned over to the State Department for their investigation. The State Department in turn advised MPD and that all travel and use of the passports by the holders of the passports was within the law and no action would be taken. This included travel to Moscow, North Korea, and North Vietnam from the late 1950s to the mid-1970s.
So it says that those places weren't allowed to be traveled to. So does that mean no one's allowed to travel there?
Well, essentially what it is that the U.S. government said that people can't travel there. So if...
Oh, so you're kind of taking your life into your own hands if you decide to travel there?
No, it means that if you traveled there, that means that you were allowed to go by the U.S. government.
So just a normal person couldn't be like, oh, I'm just going to take a trip here. Oh.
Correct.
How were we allowed to do that?
Because we were spies.
No, but I mean, how was the government allowed to say that to people? You can't travel there.
They did that for COVID too.
Oh, yeah. I don't know. That just sounds weird.
Oh, it's definitely very
know what I mean?
Weird. But the point being is because these were no travel zones for regular citizens, finding these passports of these saying they had gone there meant that the only reason they would have is for a government agency who sent them there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
And it is confirmed for sure. The wife definitely worked for the CIA. Okay. There is no question. That is not a conspiracy. That is fact. That is a true point.
I can grab one fact out of this.
Yes. There's a couple that you know for sure. Mm-hmm. And it's funny when people be like, we know for sure that this isn't a thing. But everything else, who knows?
Yeah, it's like a column. For sure. And then everything else,
maybe. So at one point when talking to reporters about the CIA allegations or being a part of it or whatever,
okay,
Petty told them about his wife's connection to the CIA being a possible reason why this conspiracy really started to take hold of everybody. Something that was also noted as being odd was that Petty also claimed that his son worked for Air America, which, according to reporter Elizabeth Voss, was an airline that was recognized as a CIA front and was involved in the Iran-Contra scandal.
Oh, what's that?
I have no idea.
Oh. Some scandal in Iran.
I was thinking that you would know and tell me.
No idea.
No idea.
You're the history person.
Yeah, but unfortunately, modern history, we didn't go over as much in school. So,
is this modern history?
I'm assuming that this was 80s.
Oh.
Yeah. I think Iran conflict was starting in the 70s and 80s. I think.
You know I don't know.
I know. But there might be someone who's listening that knows, which is why I'm saying I think.
Oh, so let us know.
Yeah, right?
You can even be anonymous if you want to.
Yeah.
I don't know how you would send us an email, but you can still be anonymous.
Just, all we ask is...
Just redact it.
That's good. All we ask is that you're just nice to us.
Yeah, that's all.
So this airline would go on to be renamed as Southern Air Transport. And that would then be associated with infamous child sex trafficker Jeffrey Epstein.
Ooh, that gave me goosebumps.
Who apparently also claimed to be a part of the CIA, and that's why he was going to get a deal, was because...
Oh, I didn't know that.
I'm like, no, they're just going to murder you.
Yeah.
I'm like, duh. You can't possibly look at Jeffrey Epstein and all the ties and all the relationships that he had with people and truly sit here and be like, oh yeah, he just killed himself.
Yeah.
Because his other half, who just went through whatever court proceedings, the Ghislaine Maxwell, whatever her name is.
Oh, yeah.
The judge decided, nope, the public can't know what this is. I'm ruling that this is going to just stay behind closed doors. And I'm like, because if we found out who was in that little black book, the entire U.S. economy and the infrastructure of the United States would fall apart.
Oh, yeah.
Because you already caught a prince. So, and Bill Clinton was real friendly. I think Hillary had him taken out. I think Hillary is a lot still powerful, even though she's no longer running.
Oh, God, yeah, she is.
Oh, for sure.
Apparently she's really mean.
Could see that.
People who have worked with her, like my grandma knew someone who knew someone, like, down the line, who apparently worked with Hillary Clinton for something and was like, oh, she's like very mean. I could be wrong. This is not slander. This is not whatever that other word is.
Maybe she was in a bad mood since her husband cheated on her.
I will say Monica Lewinsky has the funniest Twitter.
Oh my God. She's
hysterical.
Amazing. She's amazing.
She really took an awful situation she's in and she's like, all right.
And like the thing is, especially now being older, like you always heard about it.
Yes.
And because you heard about it from other adults, you're like, oh yeah, that, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But then you hear it in context, you're now older and it's like, she's a child.
Yep.
He's an adult man in a position of power.
Yup.
And we do what we always do, and we always just blame the woman as if it doesn't take two to tango.
Like, what was she wearing?
I should be able to walk around naked and nobody touch me.
Mm-hmm.
I might get arrested for indecent exposure, but that's not the point.
But men can walk around without a shirt on and they'd be fine.
Mm-hmm.
Some have bigger boobs than I do.
I can't make that argument.
You can't. You cannot. I can.
Right. So, Voss also reported that the children that had been found in Florida told the officers of a man named Mr. Lucky who lived at the farm in Virginia.
Ew.
It was later discovered that this Mr. Lucky was actually named Ronald Alman. Alman was the last name of one of the men found with the 6 children. One report I read said that it might be the same guy. He just went by a different name, but I'm not 100% sure on that fact. However, what I am sure about is that he was an ex-Green Beret.
Oh.
Another report from investigators who interviewed numerous parties who knew of or had been associated with the group stated they interviewed Lieutenant Lee Hart of Culpeper, Virginia. The report said, quote, he stated he was familiar with Petty and had contact with the cult finders. Oh, I guess contact in. Hart had a contact in the finders.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. When I first read contact with, I thought he talked to them.
Right, yeah.
But I think it meant he had a contact, comma, with the finders.
Okay.
So he
like
had a person
on the inside.
Exactly.
Okay.
I didn't get that until just now when I had to reread it. So Hart said that this contact had told him that Petty put the word out to members to flee and hide. And Hart had stated that Petty himself could probably go to Andrews Air Force Base and get a military plane to China. This led some to believe that Petty still had military and government connections, even though he had long been retired from the Air Force during the 1987 investigation.
Okay.
And then there's a report dated April 13th, 1987, that kind of summarizes MPD's assessment of the findings of this group. This is what it says. It's weird. It is the writer's belief that the Finders organization is and has been utilized by the Central Intelligence Agency as a disinformation service spreading non-essential, non-critical information to various organizations throughout the United States and overseas. Can anyone say Russia and Trump? because that's immediately what I first thought of. This group, to the most part, is made up of overeducated non-achievers who lack the inborn initiative to succeed on their own. Therefore, they fell in with a charismatic leader who gave them direction and self-importance. To the most part of this investigation individually is harmless. However, when directed and monitored by a controlling factor, they are capable of destructive and illegal activities. As in any cult structure, the main drive is for the group, and individual values and ideologies are lost.
Oh, okay.
No one proofread this for grammar. Okay, I'm just going to read you what it says.
Okay.
Therefore, when a member is asked to perform a task that heretofore may have been objectionable, he or she performs this mission for the good of the group.
So pretty much saying like it could be a bad task, but if it's going to promote the group, they're going to do it.
Okay. Yes, that makes sense. As to the abuse of the children, I do not think that child abuse was a planned tactic of this group, but as in any cross-section of society, sick and demented subjects belong to a cult as well. I do believe that the shaping of the
I do believe
that the shaping of the children is a planned experiment of this group, as in the case of the Nazis, they strove for a perfect society, thereby, in their own way, tried to form a group of children and ultimately adults that did not suffer from the ills of normal society, but took only the benefits that afforded them perfection. Lastly, I do not feel that the finders have disbanded as reported by their leaders. Be instead, as reported in their master plan, they have appeared to disband to prevent further detection by law enforcement or social service officials. I firmly believe that this group should be monitored in a general sense, and if further developments occur, they should be noted.
Wow.
So all of this information was turned over to the FBI, who were conducting the preliminary investigation for the DOJ.
Oh my God. Okay.
The FBI...
The FBI is under the DOJ.
Yeah.
Okay.
Gets worse. The FBI interviewed everyone who had been involved in the case in 1987 and obviously looked over all the documents. A couple more odd things that are in there. So there is an explanation from Martinez for what happened when he tried to collect evidence from MPD about the finders. Martinez was saying that MPD was the one who told him that the CIA was involved.
Right.
So he's trying to go get whatever evidence that is.
Okay.
This is what this report said. The search warrant was one of 2 executed simultaneously upon premises belonging to an organization known as the Finders, and were the result of allegations of child abuse received from Tallahassee, Florida Police Department. Based upon my observations, I determined that subsequent investigation by the U.S. Customs Service was warranted and attempted to access the evidence collected for a period of approximately 2 months. I was unsuccessful in gaining that access and was informed by Sergeant Stitcher, now deceased, that the Finders was a CIA, Central Intelligence Agency front gone bad, and that the evidence was unavailable. I reported via memorandum and report of investigation my observations during the search warrant and my subsequent conversation with Sergeant Stitcher. The first memorandum was sent to Customs Headquarters to the attention of the Child Pornography and Protection Unit and Branch Chief Robert Cockerell. The second was also sent to Customs Headquarters, but I have no record of means of transmittal nor the addressees. So basically, he couldn't get the evidence. The police said, supposedly, that it had all been, taken by whoever. Yeah. And the FBI couldn't re-interview Sergeant Stitcher because he died prior to the 1993 investigation.
Naturally.
And he's the one who's, really saying, I talked to this person, and it's in that report, but he's now no longer here to, what's that word?
Corroborate?
That one. An additional connection to the Finders was documents about a company that had trained CIA agents in computer operations, and some employees of that company were members of the Finders.
Okay. Which
really set people off.
Yeah.
That is the only connection the CIA will acknowledge, and that Marion Petty's late wife worked for them. So they did say, this company trained us, but that's it.
Yeah.
And then I think the CEO commented later on and said we've never worked for the CIA, we're just this company. But then there's also some documents that talk about these companies that are tied to the Finders and for people to look into them. But then there's nothing else on them, at least that I could find. It's just these should be checked out. And even some of those on that list of here are these people that are connected and businesses, we should check them out. Some of it's taken out. I can't see all of them.
Because naturally.
I'm just look, I get you're trying to make us all sound paranoid and be look, there's nothing here. But then, and you also think that probably no one's going to dive through those 600 documents. But guess what? Half of them are the same. So it really doesn't take that long to look through all of them.
Right. And there are people out there who will have the time to do things.
I'm telling you, if I had a printer, a bulletin board, and string, 100%. I grabbed a notebook to start writing things down as I went through these.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I have a piece of paper because I was writing down the police reports from the 1987 incident because I'm reading these and I'm like, look, I get maybe no CIA connection, whatever. Throw that out if you want to. But there's so much other shit that I'm like, why wasn't this... There's other weird things that this cult is doing aside from maybe being associated with the CIA that no one is addressing.
Right. It's because the CIA is the biggest issue. So it's like the other stuff just kind of falls to the wayside.
Literally, the whole report, predominantly, except for the beginning few documents, was just whether or not it was government involved or whatever. And I was like, so no one's concerned about anything else. Cool. Anywho, so the FBI worked with their Washington Metropolitan Field Office to gather information in regards to the investigation that the CIA may have interfered. The FBI released a document in their vault dated April 29th, 1994. So this was part of the second investigation.
Yeah.
From the WMFO, the field office, and indicated that MPD Intelligence Division, separate, I guess, from, had a working relationship with the CIA. So this is what the report said.
I mean, that makes sense.
In the 1987 timeframe, the MPD Intelligence Division had a working relationship with the CIA where they could make direct telephonic inquiries concerning ongoing investigations. During the course of the finder's investigations, someone in MPD Intelligence Division related that he was told that one of the finder's group members, 2-line redacted classified secret, indicated that, quote, this information did not influence the outcome of the investigation at all.
That like doesn't really tell us anything.
Well, right, because it's like he was told that one of the finder's group members and then it's redacted after that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. So the article that Voss wrote for the Mint Press addresses the procedures to the investigation and how it could be easily covered up given how the second investigation went. So this is what she said. Quote, this is dubious work, as the field office had collaborated with the MPD in the initial 1987 finder's investigation, as acknowledging in synopsis dated in 1994. So again, all these things that she's saying, you can go look in those documents and you can see them.
Okay.
So all of this is compiled by the Washington field office. So also, according to Martinez, the FBI's counterintelligence division instructed MPD to, quote, not to advise the field office of, quote, anything that had transpired. In other words, the DOJ and FBI were relying on a field office already heavily involved in the initial investigation and apparently intentionally kept in the dark to investigate its own findings if there had been interference. So the field office would have hardly been neutral or fully informed third party appropriate to investigate. On top of that, there are more released documents. So the DOJ passed it on to the FBI, who then passed it on to the field office. It also specifically indicates that the field office sent them a summary of the documents to HQ and only sent documents that were deemed significant. Right. So, you know, on the outside, when you're reading them, you're like, oh, okay, yeah, the FBI field office, I mean, that makes sense. They were involved. But then when you hear the involvement, so to speak, and if you're investigating these investigators, that there might have been interference, but yet you're going to rely on them to send you the information.
Right.
2 + 2 is not equaling 4 here. I went back and I looked to see if I could find these documents, and they are in there. At first, I was like, well, all these people read it, but I wanted to look over it at the very least to make sure that what these people were saying were in there.
Right.
And I definitely found most of it. I didn't go looking for all of it.
Yeah.
So without her context, the documents do come across more as an informational memo about the procedure. But putting it into context, it changes everything. So at the end of their investigation, the DOJ determined that there wasn't any evidence that
corroborated
the original claims, and the case was closed in 1994. The finders were brought back to the media in 2019 when they released all these documents. So this case definitely has its moments where information provided only creates more questions than answers.
Yeah.
Most people believe that there's no smoking gun evidence that
corroborated
the claim of CIA interference in the original investigation, and that the documents released by the FBI also don't provide any definitive evidence. And having seen it myself, there were big chunks of information redacted.
That's what it sounded like.
You know, like there were pages where you had 2 paragraphs that were just gone.
And it's like, those are probably the really important, like, tie this all together paragraphs.
Exactly.
I wonder whose job it is to decide, like, nah, no one else gets to see this.
Well, and on all the documents, too, it's like classified, secret, and they had to like cross that out and like write like a special note that this could be considered declassified.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. There's like a whole, and they, at the beginning, their like table of contents is basically like all the pages, most of them said duplicate. So it sounded like these were copies, obviously, of something. And it does look like a photocopy. It looks like someone put like a sticky note on top of the paper. And then, because it doesn't look like darkened, it's just white. Yeah. And it says at the bottom the amount of pages that were taken out. So obviously you see the redacted information. And then on top of that, you know that not all of the information was included. And they randomly throw in like information about, there was like another big investigation at the time into like a preschool or something like that. And the layout of the preschool were included in these documents. I don't know. The more I got into it, the more I was like, I don't know what you're referring to.
Right. Like, because so much was taken out that now you don't know what it's talking about.
I was like, what are you? And I couldn't tell who the reports were coming from. And most of them were saying the same thing. And I was like, are these multiple people who are just agreeing? Is it like, I don't know. It was weird. It wasn't helpful at all, basically. It was also reported both by people looking over the documents and writing articles about them and within the documents themselves that Martinez was the only person involved in the original investigation to make the claims of, you know, the things he saw at the warehouse and the CIA being involved. And the only other person to corroborate is dead. Yeah. An officer with the TBD also reported that neither he nor any other officers had been contacted by any government agencies about the case trying to sway them one way or another. So again, their idea is like, well, there's no evidence that we can find. So Wendell Minnick, who apparently investigated the group on his own back during that time, told Washington City paper in 1996, quote, "The finders would love for you to think that they are a CIA front, but I would say they're really nothing," says Minnick. "You're going to hear a lot of bullshit on the finders because they lie. These are dysfunctional adults, but they're all working their asses off. They're constantly working on some project. If you have a cult, the best way to control people is to keep them busy, to keep their minds occupied. If you have people standing around doing nothing, then they start thinking." As of today, it is believed that the Finders group has been disbanded, especially because their leader, Marion Petty, died in 2004. And as far as the federal government is concerned, there was no CIA involvement. There was no cover-up.
Of course not.
The Finders aren't a front for anything.
Yes.
And they're not a satanic cult.
It just makes it more suspicious when you take so much away. You know what I mean?
Right. And I also feel like, too, especially that 1987 investigation, especially when I was rereading it, it reminded me of yours, where I'm like, there's other things that had happened that you did not come back to.
Yes. That you mentioned, you're like, oh, here's the thing, but we're going to keep going on.
I'm like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
There are other shit that you find that's fucking weird.
Yes.
And so even if they're not CIA, they're definitely fucking weird people.
There's still something there.
There's some weird.
Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be just CIA for you to want to look into it.
Right.
Yeah.
And I feel like, too, like, that's what that sergeant was saying in that final, like, yes, he obviously thought that it was the CIA involved, but he also was like, yo, there's some weird shit going on with these people. You need to keep an eye on them. And that's my kind of conclusion. I'm like, whether or not the conspiracy part is actually true, there is something funky about this.
There's something with the group.
There's
something.
Some ain't right.
No. It didn't sound right from the beginning.
No, and especially just like the things that they're doing. And then I'm like, well, yeah, of course people think they're spies. They're walking around with a fucking notepad.
Right.
In a suit.
Right.
There was one article I read where it was from the 90s and the reporter had gone to Culpeper to find and talk to Petty. And I can't remember if it was a he or she reporter, but they found him, talked with him, and they said that, like, you know, he was very charismatic. The kind of conversations that they were having, he seemed very intelligible about things. But what was weird is that when she met with him, there was another man who had a notepad who was going to be sitting in on it, taking notes. And then at one point, he just stops in the middle of their conversation and tells the reporter that the guy who's with them is now going to ask her questions.
What?
Yeah, it was very weird. And like he'll send someone to go somewhere first and like scout it out, so to speak. And then he goes, and he always has somebody with him.
That's so weird.
Like, to the point where it almost kind of looks like some sort of bodyguard, Secret Service type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Also weird is that on this theater that had been shut down in Culpeper, random things had been spray painted onto walls and whatnot. Very ominous, very weird.
Of course.
And one of the residents had noted that I guess something that had been spray painted was some sort of biblical verse. And that same biblical verse is somewhere with the CIA. I don't know if it's like on a plaque in a building or something, but there's like an association that
weird.
I could go back and find it and find the specific thing. But like that quote, Bible scripture, whatever, is also in like a CIA
like associated
building.
with the CIA.
Yeah,
somehow.
something.
Ew.
Yeah. And a lot of them were talking about like, oh, well, why did no other members come forward? And I'm like, if you read the first investigation, there is definitely shit in there where former members were saying that they were scared of retaliation.
Mm-hmm.
It also says how at the place that the kids were at, like taken to by CPS, there had been a call of a bomb threat.
Oh.
And that it was not uncommon for people to get phone calls from the finders about various threats. And there was one document I was reading, I couldn't tell if it was like a father who had a daughter and the mom had like taken her because it said something about not being able to see the child and saying something like, well, I don't think that's actually their name. I think this is their name. And that's why I'm like, the entire thing obviously focuses on the fact of whether or not there was government involvement.
Mm-hmm.
But you just read that report from 1987 from police about what they found, because they interviewed a bunch of people. You know, people talked about how like they don't see their family members anymore. They talked about that if they try to contact their family members, they receive a letter describing their family member doing pornographic things and like describing their like naked body.
Ew.
Yeah. And I'm like, okay, fuck the CIA. Can we go back to this?
Yeah.
Like,
I want to know more about them.
I was reading, I read through these ones.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually I started skipping around because I was like, oh my God, this is becoming overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
I was so into it, I paused my show. So I was sitting in silence reading this. And that's when I got the piece of paper.
Ah.
And I wrote down too, like some of the things. Okay, so here's what the subject of the investigation is called. Finders Group. White Slave Traffic Act, Sexual Exploitation of Children, Obstruction of Justice. They only focused on the obstruction of justice.
Yeah.
They didn't do anything.
Nothing else was touched on.
And then there's one police report where it writes in detail what the kids were wearing. And all of them are like extremely dirty.
Mm-hmm.
Some didn't have underwear.
Oh.
They talked about how like one of the kids wanted to go outside because that's where they thought the bathroom was.
Aww.
Two of the really little ones just went right in the room.
Mm-hmm.
And they talked a little bit more about like the kind of games that they would play. There was only one that seemed weird, but again, it didn't come back to it. So I'm like,
right.
I can't tell if I misread this or what, but it's bizarre. There's something not right there.
No. This was fascinating.
Yeah. There might not be a cover-up by the federal government.
But there's something.
But there's something. And I don't know if it's like because of like the petty's ties to the government.
Mm.
Maybe that's why they weren't looked into.
I wonder if it's going to be a thing. Like, you know how they had the documents about aliens and like 20 years later, they finally made it like unclassified, declassified, whatever, where they could like let people read it.
Yeah.
I wonder if anything like this is going to happen in like 25 years. Are we going to be able to read all the redacted stuff?
Well, what's crazy, never heard of this.
Yeah, no, I hadn't either.
Never. And when you Google it, I couldn't find a single podcast that covered it. Most of the things, there was like a Vice article.
Mm-hmm.
And then obviously there was a bunch from the Time. And then there was a bunch saying like, oh, look, the FBI declassified these. Here's what happened.
Right.
And then obviously there was a bunch of blogs talking about why that this is for sure connected to the CIA and things like that. And I'm like, I want to throw that part out. I want to go back.
Yes.
To
like
1987.
That part, okay, wild. But let's go back to like the meat and potatoes.
Yeah. Perfectly said. Because right now you just gave me a side salad and
I don't want that.
I don't want that. I want to go back to the full course meal. That's to me what threw me, because I was like, as I was reading it, I was like, well, of course something's going on. Look at all these things that are being found that are in an official report.
Mm-hmm.
It is in an official report.
Yeah.
And you're just like, well, this person said that it didn't happen. So
well,
it's fine. Yeah. I just felt like it was also very fitting to do a conspiracy theory.
Oh, absolutely.
So.
No, this was good.
To be continued.
This was an exciting one.
Yeah. It's one of those things where it's like it's solved, but not really.
No, it's not solved at all.
It's just because someone said it was.
It has more questions than answers, just like last week.
Yeah.
Wow, well, this was a good one. This was a good one.
I'm feeling a little blue ballsy with like not truly having the answers I want, but
I know we have the answers, but not the ones we want.
Maybe I'll get a bulletin board and really take apart those documents.
You should.
What was also weird to me is the documents included newspaper articles from the time. I'm like, those aren't classified. Anybody can find those. Why are you including that in this report?
Fluff.
It was weird because it was like, it's broken up into 4 parts. The first set was mainly the 1987 investigation and all the police reports from that, plus a fuck ton of newspaper articles about it, which people have said sensationalized it. Like, you can see the misreporting from the media, like truly fake news. And so that's why at first I was like, oh, yeah, it's definitely people are blowing shit out of proportion. But then I read the documents myself.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
there it is.
Sketchy shit.
So many questions.
As soon as I opened up the documents and started reading it, I was like, fuck. I can't dive too much into this. I have to cut myself off.
And that's the worst.
Cut myself off at 10. So, although there is this one document that, like, I swear to God, it seems like there's some important shit in there, but the handwriting is so difficult that I'm like, you included this because you know no sane person could fucking read it.
Yet they're like, well, we included it. It's out there.
Right.
And it's like, but
I almost want, like, I'll have to show you later and see if you think you might be able to decipher, because as I was reading these, I was like, there definitely sounds like important information in here based on the few words I can pull out.
Right.
U.S. government, man.
Well, thanks for listening.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Thank you.
DC.
DC, man.
Nation's capital.
Secrets.
I
have half a mind to think that National Treasure was a documentary.
We just have to steal the Declaration of Independence.
Can't remember what they stole it last time.
Bill of Rights? I don't know. No, it's not the Bill of Rights. I know.
Okay. Okay, good.
Well, we have all of our social media, pretty much everything at A Scary State.
Yeah, come laugh at my TikToks. They're fucking hilarious.
They are really funny.
They're really funny.
Rate and review us on all the things. Let us know when you've done it so we can send you a little something. Yeah?
Yeah.
I think that's about all.
Can't think of anything else.
So, with DC, stay scary.
And definitely stay safe.